So hey guys, this is your favorite the fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto was a Spider-Man and the king of Spider Clan? But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Richard Parker gave a tired and sad sigh, looking out the window of the plane. His brown eyes held loss, sadness, and mental age of a man who looked ready to give up on the world. In his hand he held a nearly empty glass of champagne, the bottle held tightly in his other hand. Another bottle in the seat next to him, ready to be drunk when he finished the one he had. The last 3 months had been worse than hell could ever be. On him and his wife. They were going to have a child. A boy. They had decorated his nursery and everything. They had the blue walls lined up with many stuffed animals and toys. A crib and everything needed for the years they would have in taking care of a baby. Unfortunately, fate had other plan. Their happiness at having another Parker in the family was shattered when the child came in that hospital room. The child, to which they were to name Peter, was born pre-born. His small, fragile body not able to withstand birth. He died before he could even take a breath. It wrecked Richard and Mary immensely. Even with the support of their friends and family, the two could never come back from their tragedy. His wife, who looked to be twice her age from her depression, would be seen nearly always in the nursery, dried tears in her face as she looked at a stuffed bear. If not that, she would walk the halls like a lost spirit, her eyes blank with loss and showing a broken woman. He, like his wife, had been in a depressed state. But unlike Mary, Richard used his pain on his work. He would nearly be in his office 24/7, much to the disapproval of his brother and sister-in-law, scolding him for not comforting his wife. However, what he was working on, he needed to finish. He was mad, pissed to hell. His son, before he even got to know him, was gone. Why was fate so cruel? And he was not blind. How many others in the world had suffered the same fate? To lose their children at birth, or lose loved ones from disease and plague. He wanted to change that, to give people the happiness he couldn't have. So, with the help of his colleague and friend, Eddie Brock Sr., they set off on a tough journey to create something that would revolutionize the world forever. They called it the suit, a project based on something they discovered many years ago. It was to be the cure and means of healing humanity and putting an end to disease and illness. The initial project was deemed too dangerous to use, so they worked on a fresh start. Many years ago, Richard and a few of his colleagues discovered an amazing specimen. It was some sort of symbiotic organism, a goo, which bounded itself to one of the men. It wrapped around him, covering him completely. It granted him immense strength, speed, and agility. It amazed them all. However, there was a problem. It seemed that the symbiote drained the wearing of their energy, and once completely drained, kills them. The Y had managed to contain the symbiote for study, telling no one of what they found. Richard and Eddie had hoped to create a byproduct of the symbiote, one that would not kill its wearers, but instead helped them by giving them life. And with the task at hand, Richard was on his way to Asia to meet up with Eddie, who had told him over the phone he might had found something to help with their project. He knew the risk of what he was doing, as he had been pushing away his family, the image of the disappointing glare Ben sent him at the airport popping into his mind, but if he could do this, make something that would save lives, then it would all be worth it. When his plane touched down on the ground, Richard got off. He spotted Eddie waiting for him, leaning against his truck. Greeting him, he got in and the two left the lot. "So, you said over the phone that you found something?" Richard asked, his tone tired and holding a bit of longing. Hoping to be one step forward in finishing the suit. Eddie looking at his friend in pity, knowing full well what had caused his such sorrow. To lose a child was no doubt the worst pain a parent could get. If anything had happened to his son, Eddie Brock Jr., he didn't know what he would do. Nodding, Eddie reached behind his seat and took out a device. He handed it to Richard. "Yeah, strange reading coming from the jungle a few miles from here. The reading are like nothing we've seen before. It could be like when we found that," he hinted, recalling to when they discovered the symbiote. Richard nodded as he looked at the reading, finding them strange indeed. Not of this world strange. Worth checking out. "Anyone else know about this?" he asked, cautious of any other groups or organizations showing up. Last thing they needed was S.H.I.E.L.D. or some similar organizations showing up. Eddie shook his head. Doubt it. The reading were small, and seemed to pulse in random order. I've barely caught it myself if I wasn't here to meet an old friend and was close by. Anyone joining us? Again Eddie shook his head. Decided it would be safer to keep this on the down low. So it's just you, me, and a couple of guides I got. Richard nodded. Dean sat back to enjoy the ride as much as he could, hoping to calm his troubled thoughts. Grunting, Richard chopped through the large leaves and vines of the jungle as he trudged through, Eddie and the guides behind him. He looked down at the device in his grasp, following the directions of where the source of the energy was. He shook the device when the screen fluctuated a bit, making him sigh in annoyance. He was mentally tired, but forced himself to continue. He would not give up until he finished the suit. Until he freed the world from pain and loss. He whacked the device lightly when the screen static again, before going blank, making him groan as he stopped in his tracks. What's wrong? Eddie asked. Richard raised the device, showing that it was off. The thing's dead. You forget to charge the battery of something. The brunette joked, making Eddie's eye twitch. It doesn't use batteries. You sure you didn't just break it? He shot back. He made the device himself, and if Richard broke it? Rolling his eyes, Richard just put the device in his coat pocket. No, I didn't break it. Thing just turned off. Luckily, I was able to see that we're close before it turned off. He looked around. They're somewhere in the middle of the jungle if he had to guess. Eddie looked around as well, before turning to the guides, telling them if there was anything they needed to know about the area. As he did that, Richard began walking around, looking at all the trees and ground. He came here to find something, and by the Parker luck, in which unexpected things happen, he was going to damn well find it. Speaking of the Parker luck, AAARGH. Richard gave a yell when he suddenly fell down a covered hole in the ground. He barely heard Eddie scream his name as he fell into the deep darkness below. He counted at least a minute as he fell, panic spreading to him, fearing he was going to die. To him his fall seemed to go on forever, before he came to a stop as he crashed hard into the ground. He groaned, falling on his back and behind. Oh, typical Parker luck. Moaning a bit, as he felt his bones shaking from the impact, Richard painfully got up from the ground. His heart beating hard against his chest like a drum. Though I was going to die there, he muttered as he rubbed the back of his head, flinching when he felt a growing bump from when he hit his head. Looking around, he raised a brow when he saw that he was in a barely lit cave of earth. The only light coming from the hole he fell through. Speaking of the hole, he looked up and sighed when he saw just how far he fell. It was a miracle he was alive. He could faintly hear Eddie call for him. Great, just great. Sighing, he looked around, hoping to find a way out. Walking forward, he used the wall as a guide in the darkness. Walking around for a few minutes, he was surprised when he saw a faint light ahead of him. Hopeful that it was a way out, he walked toward it. Once reaching it, his eyes widened. When he saw that the light came some kind of inner cavern. Looking around, he saw pieces of the wall and ceiling cracked and pieces fallen off, letting some light in. It was big, not too big, but enough to fit in a wide group. However, what truly caught his attention was the people that seemed to be floating over the ground, encased in some kind of bubble of energy. It was a man, blonde hair wearing a white coat with red flames at the bottom, and a woman with long red hair. They were in an embrace, and getting closer, he could see that they were holding something in a secure grasp. Taking a step forward, his eyes widened when suddenly, strange symbols, to which his history of science and master degrees could never be able to recognize and read, appear all over the floor, shining brightly. Forcing reaching to cover his eyes to not be blinded. The light illuminating the cavern, he waited for it to end, and when it did and the light vanished, to his surprise, he heard a sharp intake of breath and the sound of a baby's cry. Putting his arm down, his eyes widened when he saw that the bubble around the two had vanished, putting them on the ground. The man laid still, pulled away from the woman when hitting the ground. And Richard could see a hole in the man's abdomen. He just knew the man was dead, giving the dull eyes. Hearing gasping, Richard looked at the woman, and saw that she too had a hole in her stomach. However, she seemed to be holding on tightly to her vanishing life as she held on gently to the bundle in her arms, to which Richard knew was the baby where the cries were coming from. Sor wa Naruto-chan, daijabu desu. Subite ga daijobu ni Narutoro. It's okay, Naruto. Everything's going to be okay. The woman, the mother, whispered gently and lovingly to her son. Her voice weak, but she tried to be strong for her crying son. Hearing movement, she tensed and looked up, holding Naruto tighter to protect him. When she saw Richard, she threw him a glare, daring him to hurt her son. Seeing this, Richard put his hands up. Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you, he said softly, not moving an inch. The woman narrowed her eyes in confusion, not understanding what the man had said. But before she could do anything, she began coughing up blood, making Richard worry. Hey, don't move. You need help. I'll see if I can get help, he said, hearing the fact that his walkie-talkie broke at the fall. Sure, he studies medical for a few years, but nothing in his brain could help right now. The woman needed a hospital, and fast. He turned to run back to where the hole was, hoping to get Eddie, when... Mate, wait. Stopping in his track, Richard turned his head to the panting woman, who looked at him with cautious but pleading eyes. She looked at his eyes for a few more seconds. Before nodding softly, she looked at her whimpering son, a smile full of love aimed at him. Aishiteru, Naruto-chan, I love you, Naruto. She whispered softly at him, planting a soft kiss on the top of his head. She then looked at Richard, her eyes sad and pleading. Naruto no seiwa o shite kudasai. Care ni shite kudasai hogo shite kudasai. Please take care of Naruto. Please protect him, please. She told him, her voice and eyes growing weaker. Ongeshimasu, please. Soon her eyes grew blank, showing that she had passed on. Richard quickly went to her, hoping that there was something he could do. Placing a finger on her neck, he sighed when he saw it was too late. He lowered his head in a soft prayer for the two dead parents, leaving the cavern quiet. Only the cries of the baby to echo around. Running a hand through his hair, Richard took a shaky breath as he looked at the parentless toddler. His eyes softening at the boy, he gently held him in his hand. Just like how he and Mary lost their son, this boy lost his parents. And from what he could see, this boy was barely a day old. If this was the work of fate, then fate was a sick bastard. Shish, it's okay now, Naruto, right, everything's going to be okay, he said gently to the baby. Slowly, the toddler began to calm down, his whimpers softening. When he was calmed, he opened his eyes, showing a deep ocean blue. To which Richard could say he had never seen such a deep blue before. Taking a better look at the boy, he saw that he already had a head of growing blonde hair, and taking a glance at the man, he saw that he inherited from his father. Strangely enough, on the boy's cheeks were whisker-like markings, 3 lines on either cheek. It could have been a trick of the light, but Richard could have sworn that for a split second, he saw the boy's blue eyes flash red. Shaking his head, he put it off as it being the light. I'm so sorry that this had to happen to you, Naruto. However, it seems that your mother entrusted me, a complete stranger, to take care of you. He smiled when Naruto reached up to his face in curiosity. Leaning forward, he gently placed his forehead on the child's. Feeling Naruto feel his cheeks. We both lost someone very special to us. But I promise, we won't go through this world alone. He carefully stood up, keeping a firm grasp on the blonde boy. The scientist looked at the dead couple in pity, but had a determined look in his eyes. I promise, I will take good care of your son, and make sure nothing happens to him. I swear on it, he said. He would need to get men down here to pick up the bodies. They deserved a proper burial. Looking around, he spotted a small hole at the wall, but big enough for him to squeeze through. He smiled down at the giggling boy. Let's go home, Naruto Parker. Won't your new mom be surprised? Naruto just giggled, and he was right. Mary was surprised, as were Ben and May, when he showed up with a baby after his trip. He explained to them what had happened, and while they were skeptic at some parts, they acknowledged it, feeling sorry for boy, and saw a connection between him and the childless parents. Richard smiled as he looked at his happy wife from the kitchen as she played with a giggling Naruto at the living room. The instant Mary picked the boy up, her depression instantly left her, granting her new energy and life. And was holding on to Naruto, as if fearing he would vanish if she let go. She was still sad at the loss of her unborn son, but the second she saw Naruto, something just clicked. Like she was given a second change at being a mother. Feeling a hand on his shoulder, Richard looked up and smiled when he saw Ben, a glass of wine in his hand. Grabbing the offered glass, he sat back, his posture more relaxed than what it has been in the few months. Ben sat down next to him as the two Parker brothers looked at the giggling Naruto and gushing Mary. Ben looked at his brother. "How are you doing, Richard?" Ben asked, curious of the soft look in his brother's face. Without looking at him, Richard smiled. A true smile not seen since that day. I'm happy, Ben. After so long, I'm happy." Yes, his heart would always ache for Peter, but he knew that Naruto wasn't a replacement. No, he had promised his parents, and himself, that he would raise and take care of the blonde like he was his own son. No matter what, Naruto was now his son, now and forever. Ben smiled at his brother, truly happy for him. Things were looking up for the Parkers. 4 years later, Parker residence. A giggling 4-year-old Naruto Parker walked down the hallway of his home, wearing his red long-sleeve shirt and dark blue pajama pants with faces of Bugs Bunny on them. He and his father were playing hide and seek, but had to stop for a minute when he got a call. His mother was cooking so he couldn't disturb her. He was promised cookies later on if he was good, and he wanted them. His mischief-filled blue eyes look around for a place to hide for when his daddy was done. Opening the closet door, he looked inside to see if he could hide in there, but pouted when he saw it was filled with clothes and boxes. Looking around, he saw that the door to his dad's workroom was slightly opened. He wasn't allowed in his daddy's special room, in fear of having his sweets taken from him. He might break something, and if he broke something, his mom wouldn't let him eat cookies. Naruto was a good boy. Good boys followed their mommy's rules. Good boys get cookies. However, he titled his head lightly to the side, similar to a fox. His dad's door was always closed. Always. He never left it open, not even by mistake. Being the curious boy he was, he slowly began to approach the door, looking behind him to make sure his dad didn't see him and he didn't get in trouble. His small hands placed on the wooden door, he gently pushed, the door opening easily. Peeking inside, his eyes widened when he saw that the office was a mess. Papers were spilled on the floor, chairs tumbled over, and there was a shattered hole on the window which was slightly opened. His breath caught in his throat at the scary sight. Naruto turned his head out the room. Dad. Richard, who after finishing his call, was the dinner room alone. Haven just finished his daily video log when he heard his son calling to him. Hearing the slight panic in the boy's voice, Richard quickly got up and ran to him to make sure he was okay. Hearing the call coming from his office, he entered and his eyes widened in shock and panic when he saw the mess. Naruto standing at the side with a worried look in his face. Richard didn't say anything. He knew it wasn't Naruto's fault. No, it was much worse. He quickly ran to his desk, just as Mary entered. Haven also heard Naruto's voice. Gasping at the sight, she quickly picked Naruto up, making sure he wasn't hurt. She looked at her husband, hearing him curse under his breath. "It's gone," he said, looking at the table. "The USB for the formula is gone," he said, making Mary's eyes widen. He quickly moved and pulled out the drawer in the desk. Dumping all the contents carelessly on the floor, he carefully opened up a hidden compartment at the inner base. With a switch, he opened it, showing a file inside. Picking it up, he looked through it to make sure everything was there. It was. Sharing a worried glance with his wife, he went around the room, cleaning his chalkboards filled with formulas, and packing all the necessary files, books, and items in his bag. As he did that, Mary with Naruto in her arms quickly went to pack his things. When everything that was needed was packed, the three quickly got in the car. Driving toward his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, Naruto sat in the back, holding his favorite stuffed fox with a worried look as his parents whispered amongst themselves. It was raining, making him flinch when he heard the loud bang of thunder. Seeing this, Mary had a loving look as she looked at her sweet boy. "It's okay. my little sunshine. Everything's going to be okay. She gently told him, making Naruto nod. Reaching his aunt and uncles, Naruto watched from the doorway as the adults talked. Seeing him, Aunt May tried to give him a soft smile. He tried to smile back, but couldn't when he saw his mother had tears going down her cheeks. What do you mean you're leaving? Naruto cried after hearing his parents say that they had to leave. I don't want you to leave. Why can't I go with you? He cried, tears falling heavy from his eyes. Mary was the same as her son. Her eyes puffy and tears falling non-stop. It hurt her heart so much to have to do this. She tried to be brave, but just couldn't. Kneeling down to his level, she held her arms open to him. She was barely able to keep herself from falling back as Naruto crashed into her. She wrapped her arms around him tightly in an embrace, feeling her shirt get wet as Naruto cried against her. She took a shaking breath as she tried to hold her cries, running a hand softly through her baby boy's bright sun-kissed blonde hair. Oh, how she loved his hair. It was a bright blonde, like a small sun. Which is why she called him her little sunshine. I'm so sorry, my little sunshine. I'm so sorry. Pulling back a bit, she choked as she looked at the teary Naruto. Barely managing to put on a smile, she placed her hands on his whiskered cheeks, wiping his tears away. Memories of the times she would dress him up in fox outfits, always finding his whiskers beyond adorable, hit her, making her struggle to not cry even harder. But you father and we have some very important things to do. I'm sorry, but we can't take you with us. Placing her forehead against his, she choked as she looked into his sad eyes. Naruto, her sweet Naruto, her baby boy, we need you to be brave, okay? She asked, choking back his own tears. Naruto nodded. Smiling, Mary placed a kiss on his forehead. I love you, always remember that. Naruto nodded again, muttering a small, I love you too. Now, we need you to stay for your Uncle Ben and Aunt May in the meantime, okay? Naruto nodded, watching his wife and son give their final goodbyes. Richard felt the already there pit in his stomach grow. He had failed. He had promised his son's biological mother that he would take care of Naruto forever. Her final wish, and he failed, all because of the decisions he had made. He was a terrible father. And now, his choices were going to be the death of him and his wife, and leaving Naruto with another set of parents gone. Fate was a bitch. Moving forward, he knelt down next to his wife and son, and pulled them into a tight group hug. He struggled to hold in his tears. Why was life so cruel? Ben and May watched with frowns at the sad family. The addition of Naruto in the Parker family was the best thing that had ever happened to them. He had unknowingly pulled Richard and Mary out of their depression. And even though he didn't have his parents' looks, they knew that blood or not, Naruto was their son. Haven been seen with the familiar spark in his eyes when he looked at his school books. Unknowingly having the same growing interest in science as his parents. Genetics or not, Ben and May counted Naruto as a true Parker. They themselves see Naruto as their real nephew who they loved immensely. Pulling back a bit, Mary gulped down a sob as she unconsciously moved a stray bang from her son's face. Her fingers trimmed through the untamable mess that was her son's hair, calling back to the weeks she spent trying to fix it, but later gave up. Haven grown to love his wild hair. And his blue eyes were like looking into the ocean. She chuckled sadly, knowing she would never get to see her son get chased by girls, as she knew he would grow up to be very handsome. He likes to read stories before bed. And likes to sleep with the door a bit open. Don't let him stay up past 10, or eat candy before dinner. She told Ben and May, her voice breaking up as she kept playing with Naruto's hair. Richard frowned sadly as he reluctantly pulled his wife up, feeling her begin to shake. Ben stepped forward and held his hand out to Naruto, smiling a bit at him. With a sad look, Naruto wiped his tears and grabbed his uncle's hand. He watched as his parents began to leave, sending him one last sad smile. Before they got in the car and left, it would be the last time Naruto Parker saw his parents, as a week later, two men appeared at the door. The plan Richard and Mary Parker were in, crashed, killing everyone on board. 12 years later, blue eyes blinking, Naruto Parker shook his head as he snapped out of old memories. Sighing, he posted the latest picture he took by being the photographer for the school's news club on the bulletin board. Closing the glass case, he grabbed his skateboard which leaned against the wall. He walked off toward his locker, pulling his hand in the pocket of his black and orange jacket, his red backpack slung over his shoulder. He wore black pants and red and black sneakers, with a camera hanging on his chest. At the age of 16, he stood at 5 feet 7 inches. And his blonde hair had reached down to his shoulders. It was still as wild as usual, but a bit more tamed. He had a bang falling over his forehead in between his eyes, and if he narrowed his eyes, it would give him a sexy look, according to the female students, even more due to his whisker-like marks that women found wild and sexy. Around his neck were black and orange headphones, while on top of his head were familiar glasses. His father's glasses, that when he put them on, his eyes suddenly adjust to see through them for some reason. Same as when he takes them off. He likes to wear them when he's doing homework, or working on home projects. According to his Uncle Ben and Aunt May, it makes him look a lot like his father. Naruto, after much studying, not only became one of the most handsome students in the school, but one of, if not, the smartest student there was. Though he likes to keep his grades average, given that his smarts led to bullying at his past grades, and according to a few of his friends, was very dense when it came to women, which he had no idea what they were talking about. Moving through the crowded halls, he made it to his locker. Putting in the combination, he opened it up and exchanged his books for the next class. The door of the locker was stamped with pictures of him and his friends. Hey Naruto. Speaking of friends, leaning his head back, he spotted his best friend walking towards him. Mary Jane Watson, though Naruto likes to call her MJ, a cute girl he would secretly admit, having long dark red hair that reached down to her back, had soft green eyes, and a few freckles on her nose and cheeks, which Naruto found really cute. He had known her since first grade, when the two became great friends. It helped that their aunts were friends, and lived close to each other by a few blocks, and since then, were practically inseparable. Whenever there was one, the other was always nearby. They were so close, people would often joke of them one day getting married. Much to the two's first embarrassment, which later became annoyance as they always hear that. Naruto always argued that they were just friends, with MJ agreeing. Though a bit reluctantly with a small blush at first, much to Naruto's confusion. Currently MJ was the reporter for the school's paper, which given her love for finding out juicy secrets, she took as her honorary mission. Sup MJ, he greeted as he stuffed the books in his bag. MJ leaned on the lockers next to his, looking at her best friend in amusement. So tell me, how goes the life of one Naruto Parker? She asked with a smirk. Naruto glanced at her and scoffed in amusement, closing his locker and leaned on it. Oh you know, going to school where the status of one's popularity could mean life or death. Going to boring classes, eating disgusting cafeteria food, and having to deal with a best friend who looks at you like you're tomorrow's latest gossip story. Other than that, I'm good, he said with a shrug, chuckling when Mary Jane elbowed him on the side. She pouted at him, crossing her arms with a huff. I'll have you know that you aren't tomorrow's gossip issue, you're next week's. Rumor has it that one of the married teachers is having an affair with a student, she said with a grin. Naruto rolled his eyes at that. Drama. No thanks. MJ, you promised that you wouldn't use gossip to ruin people's lives. Remember when you wrote about that cheerleader cheating on her boyfriend with the guy from the soccer team? He reminded, giving her a deadpan look. MJ pouted, crossing her arms childishly. People deserve to know the truth, she argued, not at the expense of hurting other. He shot back. Mary Jane grumbled as she was forced to agree with Naruto. Fine, I'll just writ about the mystery meat that's being served at the cafeteria, she muttered. Naruto chuckled at her. Ah, look Kong, princess is getting along with her pet kitty cat. The two cringed when they heard a dreadful voice. Turning, they groaned when they spotted Flash Thompson, quarterback for the Midtown High football team, as well as the local high school bully. It was safe to say that Flash had picked Naruto as his daily target of insults and mockery, mostly due to the blonde's strange markings. Flash was a tall, muscular teen with blonde, spiked up hair and green eyes. His well-chiseled jaw and looks made him a handsome teen to the girls, putting in him a tie with Naruto, much to the former's annoyance. Naruto and Mary Jane had the dishonest pleasure of saying that they were once friends. Flash in elementary and middle school, back when he was actually nice to hang out with, before he let popularity swell his head. When high school come, he figured popularity was more important than friendship. Luckily, Flash never tried to physically pick on Naruto. A glare from the whiskered blonde would make Flash pale and back off. So he settled for insults and mockery. At his side was Elizabeth, Liz Allen, Flash's girlfriend. Sending Naruto and Mary Jane an apologetic look. Liz was a cute girl with long dark brown hair, brown eyes, and a tan skin tone. She was a cheerleader and had been dating Flash for a few months. Liz had been friends with Naruto and Mary Jane since middle school, when she had first moved into New York. Even though her boyfriend was a jerk to the two at times, Liz still hanged out with them. Next was Kenneth Kong, Flash's sidekick. Kong, like his name, was a big large guy, shaved head, and could be seen at least 75% of the time eating. Kong was also in the football team and was Flash's lackey, and like the blonde, helps him bully students smaller and weaker than him. However, Naruto and MJ knew that Kong was actually a sweetheart, and only acted mean. So he didn't get bullied himself due to his weight. The life of high school drama. Naruto rolled his eyes at the jock. Every day it was the same old joke. Seriously, his whiskers weren't that strange, and even if it was, the county and area code was used to them. All the way from his childhood everyone and their mother commented on his marking, the latter on how cute and adorable they made him. Flash's mocking was getting old very fast. Flash, still with the same routine as usual. I see. You've got to change you material, or you'll see you future wind up as a one-class act. Being the starter for the funny clown, Naruto said, making Liz, MJ, and a few close students giggle and laugh. Flash glared at Naruto. Watch it, Parker, or I'll. What? Stuff me in a locker? Dunk my head in the toilet? Steal my lunch money? Naruto asked rhetorically, shaking his head in mock disappointment. Oh Flash, if you keep going like this, you'll be seeing your life as nothing more than a janitor. That is, if you pass your finals without having me help you study for a whole week straight. He mocked, making all the students around the laugh. Flash's face turned red in embarrassment. It grew even deeper when Mary Jane and Liz laughed as well. He stuttered, trying to come back with a comment, but felt a hand on his shoulder. Looking back, he saw Randolph Robertson, a tall and muscular dark-skinned man with dark brown hair and eyes. Like Flash and Kong, he was wearing a school football jacket and a Midtown High hat. Randolph was a cool guy, nice to everyone and barely ever got mad. He was able to make fast friends just about everyone. Randolph sent Flash an amused grin. Wow Flash, that's got to burn. He joked, chuckling as well. Face burning red, Flash decided to not embarrass himself anymore, and left Kong behind him. Laughing, Mary Jane shook her head and looked at Naruto. Oh man, nice one, Whiskers. Naruto shrugged. Flash is a bully, nothing less. Once he's out of high school, if he gets out, he's in for a high dose of reality. Randolph nodded. True that, man. Flash was his friend and all, but the guy needed to learn that in the real world, his personality would only get him into trouble. I see that I missed the show. Let me guess. Naruto put Flash in his place again. Turning his head, Naruto smiled when he saw his other best friend, and the school's local, rich boy, Harry Osborn. Harry was a good-looking guy, as well as one rich, making him the eye candy of nearly the whole female student body. His father was Norman Osborn, the president of Oscorp, a multinational corporation, making hundreds of dollars in investments. Harry was popular in school for both his money and looks. He had swept-back brown hair, and stood at the same height as Naruto. Naruto raised a hand in greeting at him. Yo, Harry, how's my favorite money bag? He said with a wide grin. Harry rolled his eyes with a grin at his friend's antics, knowing he was just joking. One of the reasons Harry liked hanging out with Naruto is because the blonde didn't give a damn about his rich status. Naruto just liked to hang out with him because they were friends. True friends. Unlike other people, Naruto didn't try and get friendly favors out of him, or ask for a few bucks. To Naruto, if you wanted something, you had to earn it through hard work, and not from other people. Exchanging high fives, he nodded in greeting to Mary Jane, getting a nod back. The three made their way to their next class, which Naruto and MJ shared, as Randolph left with his girlfriend, Sally Avril. So, you guys excited about tomorrow? Naruto asked with a wide grin. MJ and Harry looked at him in confusion. What's so special about tomorrow? MJ asked, raising a brow when Naruto sent her a shocked look. You're kidding me, right? He asked, looking at her and Harry. His look increased when the two shook their heads. How could you guys forget? Tomorrow we're going on a class trip to the Oscorp Science Center. He said in excitement, his eyes practically having stars in them. Now knowing what had him so excited, MJ and Harry rolled their eyes fondly. Naruto had inherited his parents' love for science, and was always excited to learn more on the subjects, often getting caught up in a trance when talking about things no one but people at his level would be able to understand. While not as much of a prodigy on their fields like them, Naruto had determination and will, and always read books numerous times until he memorized the whole thing word for word. Hell, there was on CE a time where he would be so deep in his studies, he would ignore his friends and family. It nearly ruined his friendship with Mary Jane, if his uncle didn't knock him out of it. Now, more than a few times, if he ever showed signs of unconsciously distancing himself again, MJ would whack him at the back of his head to pull him out. Harry chuckled in amusement at his best friend, while Mary Jane rolled her eyes. Even knowing Naruto for as long as she did, she still didn't understand his love for science. Well, she did, but she just couldn't keep up with him. Man, Naruto, still the geek as ever, huh? Harry teased, making Naruto pout childishly, making MJ turn her head to the side, hiding her burning cheeks at the cute look. I'll have you know, this geek helped you pass your finals last year. He pointed out, and of course I love science. Not only are there so much great discoveries from it, but it's also an honor of my parents. He finished silently, a sad frown appearing on him as he recalled the last time he ever saw his parents again. A flick to the forehead made him stagger back with a yelp. Running his mark, he looked at Mary Jane, who sent him a disapproving glare. She pointed a finger at him like a scolding mother. What did I tell you, Naruto Parker? You do not go into a depression again. It took me and your aunt and uncle a long time to pull you out if the last one when we were kids. And we're not going through that again. I know you miss them, but it's no excuse to keep mopping around, okay? I swear, if you go emo again, I'll take away all of your ramen. She threatened, making Naruto pale at the fear of his precious ramen being taken. It was the food of the god. Heaven on earth. She wouldn't dare. However, seeing the look in her eyes, he knew she wasn't bluffing. He rapidly nodded in agreement, making MJ put her hands on her hips with a satisfied smile. Behind them, Harry chuckled in amusement at the two friends. They're like a married couple. They can deny it all they want, but nearly everyone knows that they hold feeling for the other. Shaking his head at the two, he spoke up. So Naruto, your excitement for tomorrow aside, you want to come over? I just got that new Call of Duty game, he offered. Grinning widely at the news, Naruto looked like he was about to accept it, but remembered something, and shook his head with an apologetic smile. Sorry man, but I promised Aunt May that I get some stuff from the grocery store for her. She's cooking meatloaf tonight, and I definitely can't miss that. He didn't know why his uncle complained about Aunt May's meatloaf was great. You want to come? He offered. Harry shook his head. No thanks, don't want to intrude. Family dinner isn't my thing, he said, making Naruto frown. He knew Harry's family wasn't as tight as his. Harry's father was a strict man and was always working, ever since Harry's mother passed away. Harry was always invented to have dinner with the Parkers for years, soon becoming a part of the family. If you say so man, Naruto said, knowing he wouldn't be able to change the Osborn's mind. Just them, the class bell rang, and the three went to their classes. Later that day, Parker residence. Aunt May, please, Naruto begged, his face slightly red in embarrassment. Aunt May was a nice old lady. But Naruto, he knew she had a mischievous side to her, mostly targeted at him. He sent a pleading look at his uncle, but received no help as the man just chuckled. Smiling at her nephew, May shrugged. I'm just saying, Naruto. You and Mary Jane had been friends for a long time. And she has grown into such a beautiful young lady. You better make a move on her, before someone else does. She said as she cut another piece of meatloaf and put it on the blonde Parker's plate, whose face was burning red. Aunt May, how many times do I have to tell you? Mary Jane and I are just friends. He tried to argue, but May just waved him off. And I'm telling you that things can change. You never know, Naruto. The future is not yet written. She told him, making Naruto groan and hide his face in his hands. He sent a look at his uncle, asking for his help. Ben laughed at the blonde boy's situation. I'm sorry Naruto, but your aunt's right. He smiled lovingly at his wife, grabbing her hands gently. Believe me, back when we were around your age, May had lots of men chasing her. I was lucky when I did. And asked her out. We later got married, and spent nearly 25 years together. He smiled at her, making her smile back with as much love in her eyes. Naruto smiled at the two, loving them both very much and happy that they were together. He shook his head. Me and MJ, I'm just not seeing it. He denied. Ben chuckled in amusement. We'll just have to see. Rolling his eyes, Naruto finished his meatloaf and washed his plate before making his leave. I'm going down to the lab. He told them. Make sure you don't stay up too long down there. I don't want you falling asleep on that old couch again. May told him. Okay. May sighed. That boy. Ben chuckled, nodding in agreement. Like father, like son. He said as he took a bit out of his meatloaf, holding in a cringe at the taste. He didn't understand how Naruto could eat this. He loved his wife dearly, but her meatloaf was her biggest failure. With the approval of his aunt and uncle, Naruto had turned their basement into his own personal lab. Old boxes were either thrown out, sold in a garage sale, or put in a personal storage. With the big space, he put in several old computer monitors that belonged to his parents and his uncles that he no longer used. Naruto bought the latest Stark Industries server for fast processing. He also had a work shelf at the side for when he wanted to invent something. 2 wide chalkboards which had formulas his father worked on but next got to fix, and had brought the old couch down for when he wanted to relax. There were a few boxes kept down here, holding his father's old books, journals, and equipment, and a few photo albums of his mother's. He also had a radio for music, a small TV for news watching, and even a projector for videos or movies. Sitting down on his rolling chair, he rolled over to his computer. Grabbing an earpiece, he put it on. Main server. Online. He commanded, his voice-controlled server turning on. System on. Password code. Pouting MJ looks like a chipmunk. Instantly, his monitor turned on, displaying a wallpaper of his parents in their wedding day, smiling at the camera. Smiling at the picture, Naruto silently gave his prayer. I miss you guys. I love you. Shaking his head from the sad thought, he stood up. Play Richard Parker's record where we left off. He commanded. Instantly, a recording played, the sound coming of the speakers placed at the corners of the room. This is Richard Parker. This is entry number 15. It is 6:36 p.m., October 5th. I have lately been studying the camouflage mechanism of chameleons. Naruto put on his father's glasses. The blurry vision instantly vanishing and showing clear vision like a camera. He stepped in front of the board, looking at the formulas. All right Dad, show me what you need fixing. With his headphones over his ears, Naruto stepped off the bus, MJ right behind him. Blue eyes rolling up, Naruto stared in awe at the tall and big building in front of him. It felt like a dream come true for him. He was actually in an advanced science center, home of technology so advanced, they were not seen anywhere else. Even Tony Stark didn't have some of the tech here. MJ chuckled at the look on her friend's face. She knew he was having a nerd moment. This was heaven for him. Somebody pinch me, 'cause I must be dreaming. Ow. He immediately regretted his statement as he sent Mary Jane a soft glare. To which she replied with an innocent look. He grumbled something along the lines of, "Minx," as he rubbed his elbow where she pinched him. "Naruto, you're drooling." She pointed the slight drool on the corner of his mouth. As the blonde cleaned his lips, MJ looked around, seeing all the students get off the bus and gather around the instructor up front. Her eyes also took in the large building they stood in front of. She could now see what had made Naruto daze. The building was epically tall, as tall as the Empire State Building. It reached all the way up to the clouds. She could barely see the roof edge. Seeing how big it was, she knew it would have taken decades to build such a thing. "All right people, gather around," the teacher called out. Naruto and MJ moved up to the front. The teacher waited until everyone was gathered. "All right, we will head inside and meet with our guide. I want everyone to be on their best behavior." At that, she sent Flash and Kong a warning look. She did not forget what they did on their last field trip. Said teens tried to look innocent. And failed. Stick together, and don't wander off. Follow all the rules and don't touch anything. Giving the students one last stern look, they headed inside. When in met the guide, a cheerful Asian woman wearing a lab coat. "Welcome to Oscorp Science Center. This is where Oscorp makes great discovering which work to improve how people live their lives." Beginning the tour, the guide led the group into the building. Naruto and MJ were in awe at how massive the inside was. As the tour went, the guide talked about the history of the center and all the genetic and medical breakthroughs. However, only Naruto, and Mary Jane to an extent, were paying attention. Everyone else was finding it too boring. And were just happy to not be in class. Event he teach was barely holding on to staying away. They went up to one of the upper floors, into a workstation. Currently, our lab is studying a new experiment. One helped begin by a Dr. Kurt Connors. Cross-species genetics, Naruto muttered, making Mary Jane look at him. "What?" she asked him. Making sure no one was hearing them, Naruto looked at her, his voice low. "Dr. Connors studies cross-species genetics. To, be able to transfer animal or any other species DNA into another life form. Intentionally creating a new species. It's kind of like a hybrid. Or that old chimera story. A being with the DNA of other species." Mary raised a brow at her best friend. "How do you know all of that?" she asked, a bit weirded out. "I read it online. It was also in my dad's journal. He used to work with Dr. Connors in the cross-species project before he died. Though it said that he stopped the project before it got too far. It didn't say why," he finished, looking at the display monitors on the walls as the tour guide explained a bit on the cross-species project. He had been following Drive Connors' work for a long time, being one of his heroes. At the top of the list was, of course, his father, followed by Kurt Connors, Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, and Otto Octavius. "So what? You're trying to make freaks like those mutants," Flash said, causing some muttering amongst the students at the thought of Oscorp creating mutants. Naruto shot him a glare. Unlike others, Naruto didn't see a problem with mutants. And neither did Mary Jane. To Naruto, mutants were just as human as anyone else. The guide shook her head. "No, you misunderstand. We are looking to discover the secrets hidden in the animal kingdom. And reproduce certain genetic attributes." Naruto raised his hand. The woman nodded to him. "You mean, like when a woman gets Parkinson's when the brain cells that produce dopamine start to disappear. However, there is a species. The zebrafish, which has the ability to regenerate cells on command. If you are able to somehow pass that ability to the woman, she will insentiently cure herself." The woman smiled in surprise and impressed at the teen's intellect. "Very observing. Yes, something like that is the goal of our cross-species project." "Very good, Mr. Parker," the teacher answered, a proud smile on her face. "One of our school's best and brightest." Cough nerd cough, Flash muttered, making some students chuckle. MJ shot them a glare. Naruto didn't care. He was proud to be smart like his parents. The guide nodded, still smiling at Naruto. "Well, it is the nerds, as you put it, that help out race advance." She then turned to the group. "Now then, there is something I must check. Please feel free to look around. But do not disturb the workers, or mess with anything. With permission to move around, the group separated into groups and went their own way. Naruto, Mary Jane, and Harry, who had been in the back, looking bored, were looking at the cases that held some spiders. "Wow, creepy," Mary Jane muttered as she kneeled closer to take a look. She jumped when she felt something tickle the back of her neck. She glared at the chuckling Naruto. "So not funny, Whiskers," she hissed at him. Shrugging, Naruto pulled her back a bit. "Careful, Red, you don't want to accidentally tumble the cages down and release the spiders. Do you?" Shivering at the horrifying thought of spiders crawling all over her, Mary Jane nodded and stepped back. Still chuckling, Naruto looked around the place. "I definitely want to work in a place like this one day," he said, looking at all the high-tech equipment at the back and corners, protected behind glass. Harry chuckled at his buddy. "I'm sure you will one day, Naruto. I'm pretty sure you'll be getting scholarships and invites with your big brain." Mary Jane nodded in agreement. Her friend was really smart, and no doubt would get into high colleges with his grades and smarts. Shrugging, Naruto looked at a monitor next to the spider cases. "Says here that the spiders are also part of the cross-species project. They've been injected with some kind of formula, making them radioactive, in a sense, and it could be dangerous if bitten by one." MJ shivered as she looked cautiously at the caged spiders as they jumped or crawled on the glass. Naruto saw this, and put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Red. These people would be crazy to put experimental subjects out in public. In fact, there's a note here that says that these are just regular spiders. No doubt the experimental spiders are kept in a storage or something," he said, making the redhead sigh in relief. Seeing her calm, he nudged her. Looking at him, she saw him hold up the camera he brought. "Haven't gotten permission from the guide. How about some pictures? Or are you still camera shy?" he teased. She rolled her eyes. She hasn't been shy since she was a kid. Nodding, she smiled at the camera as Naruto stepped back while she posed in front next to the cages. Meanwhile, moving through the scattered students, two men in suits, one carrying a briefcase cuffed to his wrist, made their way to the restricted area. Entering a hall, they stopped in front of a locked steel door, with an electronic pad key on the side. Putting in the entry code, the door slid open. Entering, there were two doors, one at the other end leading into a chamber in blue lighting, and another one at the side. The men entered the side door, where inside was a hall with a wide display window into the other room. Walking down, they glanced at the window, where men in hazmat suits monitored the machines which were stretching web-like substances. The previous door had been T.E. entry into the chamber to where the experimented spiders were kept. Ignoring the work, they entered the room at the end of the hallway. It was an office to the leader of the project they were here to receive the progress off. The man saw them as he stood in front of his computer, and stood up, nodding in greeting at them with a nervous smile. Without a response, they stood in front of him. "We're here for progress report." The one at the left, without the briefcase, spoke, his voice stern. Gulping nervously, the man nodded. He gestured out the side window, to where it displayed the machines stretching the web. Well, as you can see, the webbing from the genetically enhanced spiders are showing great progress. They are as durable and strong as cables, yet as light as ordinary webbing. The man cut him off. "We are not here for that, Professor. What is the progress in gene splicing?" The professor stuttered. "We were successfully able to add in the DNA of different HNID species to 3 out of the 10 spiders picked. Progress is good, and is it compatible with the cross-species project?" the man in the suit asked. Here the professor gulped, fixing his collar nervously. "Unfortunately, as you know, we have chosen the spider class, because it would make it easier to crossbreed. However, when we tried it, the test subjects have all died. As you know, the formula had been taken from Kurt Connors and Richard Parker's work. However, we have only received the first half of the formula, and Kurt Connors has shown to not know the second half. All of Richard Parker's work has vanished after his death. Without the second half, it is impossible to correct the errors." "Mr. Lee," the man said, his voice hard and threatening, making the professor tense. "May I remind you that Mr. Osborne is demanding for the project to be finished within a month's time," he said, making the man nod in understanding. Looking at the man at his side, the first suit nodded. The second man put the briefcase on the desk. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small key and uncuffed his wrist. Putting in the combination to the lock, he opened it and turned the case around, displaying what was inside to the scientist. The man's eyes widened at what he saw inside. Reaching in, he pulled out a file. Opening it up, he looked through the papers, his eyes widening more as he looked on. Is this? If you require a substitute, you will use this. The man said. Lee looked at the two in shock. But, how did you get this? That is none of your concern, Professor. Just finish the cross-species project. Or you're fired, the man said, before the two suits left the office, leaving behind the shocked professor. Back outside, Naruto continued to take pictures of MJ, who posed next to a large machine. Pointing at it with a smile. Come on MJ, the camera loves you. Mary Jane laughed in amusement. Okay, Naruto, I think that's enough pictures of me, she said with a smile. The blonde Parker shrugged. Okay then, now you take pictures of me while I pose sexy, he said with a joking grin, making her roll her eyes at him. Harry laughed at that. I'm pretty sure a lot of girls would pay a lot to have a picture of you, Naruto, he stated, with the blonde nodding. However, behind them, Mary Jane narrowed her eyes in annoyance. She knew full well that Naruto was one of the most sought-after boys in school. His handsome looks and kind nature attracting women like flies. Hell, she even saw a few of the female teachers eyed him a couple of times. And she hated it, she won't lie. She herself had a crush on the blonde back when they were kids. She still does. However, any hints she gave Naruto went right over his head. So she stopped trying for a bit. Doesn't mean she was going to let some sluts pin after him. She even knew that Liz had a thing for Naruto, before and even after she began dating Flash. But like always, Naruto didn't notice. Which was a good thing for Mary Jane. Arg, not only was Naruto so oblivious to a girl's feelings, but his kind personality will no doubt keep pilling in competition, until someone actually gets him. And heaven or hell, that's going to be me. She mentally swore. She just needed to find the right time to tell him. Naruto and Harry looked at Mary Jane as she grinned in an eerie way. Sharing a glance, they shrugged. Girls. So Naruto, how's that job hunting thing going? Harry asked as the three moved to check out the other displays. Naruto sighed. Not good. My only options are pizza delivery, or working as a photographer for the Daily Bugle. Snapping out of her daydream, Mary Jane looked at him in confusion. What's wrong with the second choice? The Daily Bugle covers some great news, she said. In fact, she herself wished to work there one day as they were one of the top 5 news businesses in Manhattan. Naruto nodded. That's true. However, it would mean that I would have to work for J. Jonah Jameson, he said, scoffing as he crossed his arms. He's nothing but an egotistical jerk who only wants to make people look bad. I mean, have you seen his last headline? Orphans cluttering the streets. No room in society. That guy likes writing false news more than he likes hearing the sound of his own voice, he argued. MJ raised a brow at his heated comments. Wow, he must really not like Jameson. Then again, the guy did try and force a comment from him when his parents died. That was not a good day for either Naruto or Jameson. For a 4-year, Naruto sure did had a strong right hook. A painful one, especially when struck in the balls. It was a bad day for Jameson. And it was a bad then turned alright day for Naruto. Nothing like punching a jerk in the balls to make someone happy. Then what are you going to do? You said it yourself you wanted to earn enough money to buy a motorcycle or something. Still don't know why, she said, muttering at the end, but Naruto heard her. I told you, I hate taking the bus. I either find myself seeing next to a fat guy, or a crying baby whose mother ignores it. I just can't deal with it, he said with a sigh, making Harry roll his eyes. Meanwhile, at the back restricted area, one of the workers in the hazmat suit came out of the room. However, the man had forgotten a strict rule when in the lab, always get disinfected. And because he didn't, he had an extra guest. On his shoulder, a small spider crawled down his back and jumped down to the ground. It scurried off, moving quickly around the giant feet of the many people and made it to the wall. It began climbing the wall and headed to the ceiling. Naruto sighed as he leaned against a ceiling post as he watched Flash and his buddies messing around with each other. Idiots were going to break something in science lab with chemicals and other fragile and dangerous equipment. I'd be surprised if the idiot lives to his 30s or doesn't wind up in jail. Mary Jane and met up with Liz and the two went somewhere else. Harry went to get him and Naruto a soda from a vending machine he spotted out in the lobby. Laying his head back, he let his mind wander. His life was good. Sure, his parents were dead, but he still had his aunt and uncle. He had Mary Jane and Harry. Sure, it was tough growing up. Being smarter than others often led to some bullying moments, but he pushed through them. He often wondered if his parents were proud of the man he was becoming, but knew that no doubt would be. He was going to honor their memories by becoming a great scientist like them. Still, he wouldn't mind some excitement in his life. Some adventure. He remembered when his father would tell him stories of the times he would travel around the world, learning new things, meeting people, and all. Though as the saying goes, there's no place like home. As his father always says, family and friends are forever, as home is where they are. Harry approached him, carrying 2 cans of Coke. Here you go, man, he said, getting the blonde's attention. Nodding in thanks, he grabbed his can. Popping it open, he took a sip. Hey Naru. Looking up, he smiled when he saw Mary Jane and Liz walking toward them. Hey girls, he greeted. How you doing, Liz? Okay. This place is pretty boring though, she said. Naruto chuckled at that. Hey, science wasn't for everyone. Well, at least we aren't in school, Mary Jane said, making Liz agree with a giggle. Rolling his eyes, Naruto took a sip of his soda. Unknown to the group, above them, the escaped spider hovered over them from a metal bar. Its 8 eyes looked down at them, in particular, the young blonde. Its primal instincts were drawn to him for some reason. Slowly and carefully, it created a web line and began to lower itself down to them. All right everyone. Looking up, the 4 teens saw the teacher. Gather around. We'll be heading up to the top levels to see more. A few students groaned at that. Rolling his eyes, Naruto took another sip. Pushing off the wall, he and his friends approached the gathering group of students. He grunted as Flash pushed past him roughly. He glared at the back of the taller blonde's head. Asshole. He felt an arm wrap around his shoulder. Turning his head, he smiled when he saw Harry. Chuckling, he wrapped an arm around his pal's shoulder too. The students were soon gathered in front of the teacher. All right then, let's get going. Mary glanced at Naruto as the group began walking. So Naruto, you enjoying the trip? Naruto chuckled, nodding as he raised his can up to his lips. You know it is, he said with a grin. Well, enjoy it while you can. Whiskers. MJ replied with a chuckle. Naruto scoffed a bit. Damn well I will, he said, and was about to take a sip, when. Everyone jumped at the scream and snapped their heads back. Mary Jane gave a cry of shock and surprise, jumping back. Harry's eyes widened as a gasp left his lips. Many of the students shouted in surprise while some nearby employees jumped. Objects in hands falling and crashing into the ground. The cause. Naruto screamed loudly, his can falling to the ground, spilling the leftover soda as he held his right hand up, showing a spider which was biting the back of the hand. He screamed as pain began to course through his body. Gritting his teeth, he swiped his hand around, trying desperately to get the spider off. With his other hand, he swiped at the spider, successfully pushing it off and sending it flying somewhere, he didn't care where. All he focused on was the great amount of pain coursing through his body. He gritted his teeth hard, his vision blurring, his eyes dilated as his head pounded. He swayed in his step as the room span. Eyes rolling, he could barely hear the worry-filled voice of Mary Jane, before he fell backwards to the ground. His vision turning black. Naruto. Naruto groaned as his senses came back to him. He raised a hand to his head, which felt like it was pounding like a drum. Damn, what the hell happened? He thought, waiting for the pounding in his head to clear. Last thing he remembered was a spider biting him on the hand, an incredible pain, and then darkness. Grunting, he sat up, holding his head. Damn spider. It better had not been poisonous. That would suck. He then remembered hearing Mary Jane's voice before he blacked out. Crap, she must be scared to death. Not to ment. On Aunt May and Uncle Ben if they were told. Better find them and let them know that I'm okay. It was weird, other than the headache, he didn't feel any pain. Maybe an antidote. Massaging his head, he blinked when he felt a strange wetness on his butt and back. And moving his hand, he heard a distinctive swish of water. Looking up, his blurry eyes soon cleared, before widening. Last he recalled, he was in the Oscorp Science Center. So where the hell was he? Looking around, he saw that he was in what looked like a large dark sewer. Oh my god, did they think I was dead and dumped my body down in the sewer to cover their tracks like in the movies? He thought in horror, before shaking his head. No way would they do that, he hoped. Looking down at the water he was sitting in, he was disgusted. When he realized that he was sitting in sewer water. Quickly getting up, he brushed the back of his pants to try and dry them a bit. Only to blink in surprise when he felt the back of his pants and shirt completely dry. Not a wet spot to be found. Blinking in confusion, Naruto looked. Is this a dream? He muttered, rubbing the back of his head. The sewer was big and wide, as big as his room. There were large pipes lining the walls, and looking at them, he saw that they had a strange glow to them. There were two sets, pipes that glowed yellow, and another, larger pipe that glowed a deep red. They ran the walls, heading into the dark shadows in front of him. Where am I? He asked, hoping to find a way out as he looked around. Looking up, all he saw was a seemingly endless darkness, not ceiling to be spotted. He closed his eyes. If this was a dream, then he should be able to wake up. Scrunching his eyes, he then opened them. Still in the sewer, sighing, he tried to figure out what to do now. Grr. The blonde Parker jumped at the inhuman growl that echoed all around him. Looking around nervously, he tried to figure out where it came from. No such luck. Gulping, he cautiously began walking forward. It was best not to stay in one spot with whatever was making that noise around. As he walked, hoping he wasn't accidentally heading into the direction of the beast, he kept an eye out for any signs of exits. Walking in the darkness, down what looked to be an endless hallway, Naruto only got more and more nervous. Just where was he? This was a dream, right? Right. If so, then why wasn't he waking up? It felt like one. As he felt like he was walking for hours. He was beginning to fear that he would be lost forever, as he wandered the darkness. Suddenly, squinting his eyes, Ey widened when he could faintly see a small speck of light. Relief feeling him, he began running fast to the light, hoping it was a way out of here. Once he reached the light, his relief left him when he saw it wasn't a way out. Disappointment feeling him, he walked cautiously into a large chamber, at least that's what it looked like. It was as big as the inside of the science center, very spacious. It was a bit brighter. The room shined in a dull pale yellow light. He looked around in confusion. There were walls made of smooth stone, yet as he looked at them, he saw that the room was cavern. Da bit in spider webbing on the walls and corners. A lot of small spiders crawling around, making his shiver as he unconsciously rubbed his hand. Great, just what he needed. More spiders. He halted in his step when a large spider, as big as his hand, crawled in his path. It didn't even look at him as it moved on, making him raise a brow. He looked at all the spider, wondering where he was for there to be so many. Maybe an abandoned sewer plant. Or if this was a dream, it was a weird one. Shaking his head, he kept looking around. Suddenly, something caught his eye. Looking straight ahead, he blinked in surprise when he saw a humongous cage, bigger than even the science center. Holy shit, I think I just found Godzilla's cage, Naruto said. He jumped when he heard the low and dead growl. The same growl he heard before. Crap. Keeping a wary eye in the large cage, the inside filled black with shadows, Naruto slowly began to walk backwards. There was no way he was messing with whatever was inside that cage. I am not going to be lunch for the steroid sewer gator, he thought. Just as he was about to reach the chamber entrance, just as he was about to be in the safe zone, he suddenly screamed. H. Screaming in pain, Naruto fell to his knees, grabbing his head as he felt a massive migraine appear. It felt like he was having a sonic emitter activate inside his skull, while at the same time his head felt like it was being assaulted by sledgehammers. Gah! He tried to fight through the pain, but it was too much. R-O-O-O-O-O-O-A-A-A-A-A-R-R-R-R. Eyes widening, Naruto struggled through the pain enough to raise his head. It was then that he saw something that would no doubt haunt his dreams. An eye. A massive eye, as big as a full-grown man. Red as blood with a vertical slit pupil, piercing through the darkness of the cage. Glaring at him with so much hate and anger, it nearly drowned him. Boy, I will rip you to shreds and escape this prison. Naruto gasped, his breath caught in his throat. When a heavy and dreadful felling smashed down on him, he fell to his hands as he felt like he was being crushed hard by gravity. His stomach acid struggled to crawl up his throat at the force. Even still, Naruto never looked away from the large eye. What was this thing? What was this monster? Just where the hell was he? The beast gave an earth-shaking roar, making the blonde teen cover his ears. You cannot keep me here forever, Yondaime. I will break free and destroy this pathetic human. Mark my words. Suddenly, Naruto's vision turned dark. New York Hospital. Snapping his eyes open, Naruto gasped hard for air. His heart raced and forehead sweated as his mind stilled on the frozen image he last saw. That large eyes glaring at him, and the heavy feeling of death washing over him. Gasping for breath, he slowly began to calm down. As his senses awoke, he now realized his location. The white walls and medical equipment let him know he was in a hospital room. Please let this be real, Naruto thought hopefully, not wanting to face something like that monster again. With a grunt, he sat up. His muscles hurt and were stiff. He smacked his dry lips. God, he was thirsty. Just then, the door opened, making him turn to it, and saw a young nurse walk in to do her checkup. Looking up, she stopped in her tracks when her eyes connected with him. The two stood silently, looking at one another. Blinking, Naruto cautiously raised a hand at her. Hi. Gasping, the nurse dropped her clipboard and ran out the room, making Naruto sweat drop. Was it something I said? Minutes later, the nurse returned with a few doctors. Naruto tried to ask something, but was ignored as the doctors checked his vitals. They kept poking him and flashing lights in his eyes. All in all, it was really annoying. Luckily, the soon finished, and silently left the room. Raising a brow after then, he sat alone in confusion. What the hell was that all about? The door then opened again, making him dread another thorough checkup. But smiled when he saw it was his Aunt May, Uncle Ben, and Mary Jane, the females having tears in their eyes as they looked at him. Hey guy, Naruto said, smiling at them. He then oofed when his aunt and best friend tackled him in a tight hug, making him groan. Though he softened when he heard them sobbing. He wrapped the two in an embrace. He smiled at his uncle, who smiled happily at him. Glad that he was okay as he ruffled his blonde locks. Once May and Mary Jane got a hold of themselves, they sat in chairs beside his bed, Aunt May sitting on the bed beside him. Holding him like a mother as she ran fingers through his hair. So, what happened? Naruto asked. Mary Jane frowned, her eyes glittering in tears. Well, after you got bitten by that spider, you passed out. Your body was twitching and spazzing like you were having a seizure. The teacher and workers called the hospital and you were rushed over her. You were unconscious for 3 weeks. A lot of the time you spazzed out. I thought that. She stopped, biting her lip. The image of a spazzing Naruto on the floor, eyes rolled up, would haunt her dreams for many nights. Naruto's eyes widened. 3 weeks. Looking at the side, he blinked when he saw a large assortment of gifts gathered at the front of the room. Aunt May saw where he was looking at and explained. Your friends from school always appear to wish you well, she said, making Naruto nod. He saw get well cards, balloons, even a giant teddy bear, much to his embarrassment, from Liz as said in the card on it. To his surprise, he saw a gift basket, and from the card. It was for Flash. AWH, so the big idiot does care. He thought humorously at the thought of his ex-friend and bully. You have everyone worried sick, Naruto. Ben said. When he and Mary got the call from the hospital about their nephew, they literally dropped what they were doing and rushed over. When they say Naruto in the hospital bed, twitching like craze. Why, with doctors all around him struggling to hold him down, they feared the worst. It was bad enough they lost Richard and May, they didn't know if they could last losing the boy they loved like their own son. Naruto frowned and rubbed the back of his head. He didn't mean to worry his aunt and uncle, especially his Aunt May. Sure, he didn't have much of a choice in getting bitten by a spider, but he hated worrying the people who practically raised him since he was 4. Sorry, he muttered. May smiled at her nephew, glad he was okay. Tightening her hold in him, she placed a kiss on the top of his head. All that mattered was that he was okay. When we get home I'll make you some oatmeal, she told him, making him nod. Once Naruto was given a few more checkups from the doctor to make sure everything was working all right, he was free to leave. Other than a big appetite, Naruto felt good. Better even. He felt completely healthy and fit. Once he got home, Naruto ate 3 bowls of oatmeal, 3 pounds of meatloaf, and 5 bowls of ramen, much to his aunt and uncle's shock. Even though he was given a clean bill, Aunt May forbid Naruto from going to school or his lab for the next few days. She would have made it a week. But Ben made her change her mind. So being forced to rest by his aunt, Naruto laid in his bed, reading a bit from his dad's journal. However, he found it hard to concentrate, as his mind kept wandering back to the strange dream of the monster. Just what was that about? With a sigh, he shook his head. He's been reading too many comics. He turned over on his back, laying an arm over his eyes. He decided to take a nap to ease his slight headache. Oscorp. Norman Osborn was a man of business. To him, maintaining his company was top priority. Don't get him wrong, he still loved his wife and son, to an extent. But the company had to come first. After all, he spent his life bringing himself to where he was now, and had to make sure nothing ruined his hard work. The techs in the lab are showing better progress in the cross-species project with the addition of the new formula. Sitting behind his desk, Norman listened to the report one of his men gave. He nodded in satisfaction. Good. Make sure they finish testing within a month. Let them know it is crucial that the project be 100% predictable. Let them know I want it finished, Norman ordered. The man nodded. Of course, sir. There is one more thing to report. Norman nodded. I'm not sure if you read the report, but 3 weeks ago in the science center, one of the students taking a tour had accident with one of the specimen. Norman raised an eyebrow, gesturing for the man to continue. He was bitten by presumably one of the spiders on display. A Mr. Parker. Norman blinked in surprise at that. Parker. Naruto Parker, he asked, receiving a nod. He knew Naruto. He was Harry's best friend. He had met Naruto himself the same day Harry did. The kid was on his way home on a rainy day when his bike broke. It just so happened that he and Harry were on their way home in a limo when they spotted him. Harry made the drive stop and decided to help Naruto out by giving him a ride, recognizing him from school. Norman could say he liked Naruto. He was very smart, not as smart as his father, Richard Parker, who Norman knew very well, but the boy had much potential. Yes, sir. The spider bit him and made Mr. Parker have a seizure. Calls for medical assistance were made and he was transported to the hospital. I've taken the liberty of assigning men to watch his recovery progress. He was signed out with a healthy bill this morning. Norman frowned. This event could be bad publicity for his company. He would need to fix this before it got bad. Have all the medical bills covered and some money transferred into the Parker's account. Also, no doubt the news would approach me about this. Have a press conference schedule. We need to keep our image good. Understood, sir. And keep an eye on Mr. Parker. This may be an accident. Maybe not. Any incidents with the science center cannot be taken too lightly. 3 days later, Midtown High. With the aunt-issued home imprisonment over, Naruto returned to school. However, his day back was one that was uncomfortable. As he walked down the hall, he was given a wide space by the other students. The rumor of his accidents had spread like fire to the whole school. Everyone giving him weird or concerned looks. Hey, you hear what happened to Naruto? Yeah, people said that he was poisoned by a spider and was taken to the hospital. It was pretty bad. I heard he almost died. You think he's got a disease from the bite? I'm surprised he actually got better and came back to school. He's been in a coma for 3 weeks. Naruto sighed at all the talk happening around him. Making it to his locker, he slammed his head against it. As if his school life wasn't bad enough. In middle school he got into a fight with some bullies who were picking on Mary Jane. It made him very angry and he attacked the boys, who were a few years older than him. End result, he got a few bruises, while the 3 guys were bleeding and had broken arms. He was called a freak and a berserker, as he showed a lot of anger. It was worse as it was his dead parents' anniversary and he was in a bad mood. His uncle Ben had helped him with his anger by putting him in boxing classes and martial arts to help calm him down. He would never forget the words Uncle Ben spoke to him. Naruto, I know that life is hard. I also know that you miss your parents very much. But know that they wouldn't want you to cry their loss forever. You know that they would want you to keep moving forward. They will never truly be gone, as long as you remember them and cherish your memories of them. You also can't let your anger get to you. You have a great mind and heart. I've seen you. You have a power to love and protect. Like your father, you will one day be able to help a lot of people. Always remember, your heart and mind are your greatest power. And always remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Naruto would never forget his uncle's words. From then on, Naruto would always keep control over his sadness and anger, knowing it wouldn't be something his parents would want. It worked, but he was still avoided in school. It only changed when he hit puberty and grew his looks, as well as began studying serious to increase his grade. Naruto felt a nudge in his side. Looking up, he saw Mary Jane smiling comfortably at him. Behind her was Harry, also smiling at him. Glad to see you're back on your feet, Whiskers. MJ said. Glad you're okay, Naruto. You sure had everyone worried. Harry said. Naruto smiled, glad to see his best friends weren't avoiding him. Yeah, well, other than a slight headache, all totally fine, he said, grinning at them. However, Mary Jane frowned when she heard about the headache. Really, maybe you should take the day off too. Get some more sleep, she suggested, not wanting the blonde to stress himself out. Naruto shook his head. Don't worry, Red, I'm fine, he said, but it didn't make MJ feel any better as she looked worriedly at him. Rolling his eyes, Naruto wrapped an arm around her in comfort. Listen, if I begin to feel worse, I'll go home. Okay, he offered. While not much better, Mary Jane nodded, knowing Naruto was too stubborn to take a sick day for his health. Chuckling, Harry moved to Naruto's other side, with the blonde wrapping an arm around his shoulder too. The 3 sharing a laugh, they moved out to head to class. However, Naruto suddenly felt a strange sensation. It felt like a buzz at the back of his head. Eyes widening, his body seemed to react before his brain did, and pulled Mary Jane and Harry down a bit with him, making them yelp in surprise. Over them, a football sailed over, and hit a teacher in the back of the head. Ah! The teacher shouted in surprise. Turning over as Naruto, Harry, and Mary Jane stood up, the latter 2 looking at Naruto in confusion. The 3 turned around as well, and saw Flash with his arm held out at them, a surprised look in his face. Mr. Thompson, the teacher shouted at the quarterback as he marched toward the blonde. While Flash was being scolded, Harry and Mary Jane looked at Naruto. Wow, Naruto, nice move, Harry said, surprised at Naruto's lucky move. Naruto just blinked, still surprised and confused at what just happened. Mary Jane nodded. Talk about luck. It's like you knew Flash was about to hit us. How'd you do that? She asked the blonde. Naruto looked at her, eyes slightly wide. I don't know, he muttered. Deciding to put the strange event behind them, the 3 went to class. Sitting in the class for nearly an hour, listening to the teacher drone on, was a struggle not to fall asleep or get distracted easily. However, for Naruto, it was much harder for him. Leaning his head on his hand, Naruto groaned quietly as he massaged his aching head. It felt like an earthquake was rumbling in his skull. And was it just him, or was the teacher talking very low, even though he was in the back of the classroom? From where he was sitting, it was like the teacher was talking right next to him. Not only him. Eye twitching, Naruto looked at the clock on the wall. Tick-tock, tick-tock. It was listening to a mega speaker. Bees. Eyes moving, he saw a fly flying at the corner, yet it was like it was buzzing right near his ear. What was happening? Blinking, he stared at the fly, which suddenly began moving in slow motion. His sight was also very strange, as from his place, his vision was similar to that of a magnifying glass. As to his sight, the fly enlarged in size. His eyes tracked the slow pattern of its flapping wings, the twitch of its legs, and the slow, echoing buzz. Grunting, he grabbed his head as he was assaulted with another round of pain. His ears began having an agonizing ringing, very loud and painful in his eardrums. Everything was so loud, the ticking of the cloud, the teacher's voice, the tapping of a student's pencil against her desk, and the screeching of the chalk against the board. Gritting his teeth, Naruto tried to drown all the noise off. It was easier said than done. Naruto, Naruto, Naruto. Eyes widening, the blonde shot his head up. All the noise just disappeared, just like that. Blinking, he looked up and saw the whole class looking at him. He saw Mary Jane looking at him in concern, Flash struggling to hold back his laughter, and the teacher looking at him in disappointment. With a bit of concern. Mr. Parker, while you may be one of the smartest students in school, it does not give you the right to daydream in class. The teacher scolded. Naruto uckled sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. Sorry, Mrs. Parkson. May I be excused to the restroom for a bit? I need to clear my head a bit, he asked. The teacher nodded, knowing about the accident on the field trip. Okay, but if you're not feeling good, go to the nurse's office, she told him. Nodding, Naruto stood up, gave Mary Jane a soft smile, and left. Walking the empty halls, Naruto massaged his temple. He then let out a gasp as a jolt of fiery pain coursed through his body. Gritting his teeth, he caught himself from falling by leaning against the lockers. Hissing, he held up his right hand. On the back of the hand, was the ward where the spider bit him. Moaning, he cradled his hand, feeling pins and needles in his arm. Gasping, he tried to keep his balance as his vision blurred. Keeping a hand on the lockers, he tried to take steps. Today was just not his day. He blinked, when he suddenly heard a noise. It sounded like growling. Eyes widening, he snapped around, the memory of his dream coming back to him. Looking around in caution, he narrowed his eyes when he didn't see anything. He gasped when another jolt of pain struck him. Again, he heard a dark growl. Pathetic virus. What? He muttered, thinking he heard a voice. Eyes widening when another strike pulsed, he fell to his knees. He groaned as he wrapped an arm around his stomach, feeling a deep burning coming from it. What's happening? He gasped out. Unknown to him, his blue eyes flashed crimson red for a split second, as well as his whisker marks growing bolder for a few seconds before returning to normal. His fingernails grew and sharpened into claws like a beast, looking to tear through skin and metal easily, then shrinking. Interesting. This may prove to be amusing. Let's see if you can live through this, boy. If so, this should prove entertaining. Who are you? He demanded, but didn't get an answer. Feeling another jolt, the blonde Parker tried to get up to his feet. Gritting his teeth, he put his hand on the lockers and tried to push himself up. It proved difficult and exhausting, but he made it to his feet. His vision blurry from the pain, his eyes watery, but Naruto could faintly make out the exit. With one arm holding the lockers and the other wrapped around his burning abdomen, Naruto walked on wobbly feet toward the exit. A part of him told him to get to the nurse's office to get help. But another part wanted to get out of there. The walls felt too close, making him too boxed in. He could barely breathe. He needed air. Making it to the doors, he pushed out, grunting when the sun hit him. He staggered across the courtyard. His head, his hand, his stomach, his everything was burning. He could barely see where he was going, his vision watered. Honk, honk, his head turning to the side. His eyes widened when he saw a car about to hit him. He barely registered a familiar tingling in his head from the shock, before again, his body acted subconsciously. To Naruto, everything that happened next was like a blur. 1 second, he stared at the approaching cars, eyes wide like a deer. The next he took a step back and, what the hell? Naruto yelled in shock, looking after the car from where he was at. And where was he? Sticking against the wall of a building across the street. Wada. What the hell is going on? Naruto shouted in fear, his mind and heart racing. To find yourself sticking to a wall like glue on his hands and feet wasn't normal. Was he a mutant? Was that how he was able to do this? No, that can't be. Could it? Hissing, he looked at his right hand, as the bite burned. Glaring at the wart, his eyes then softened and widened. He recalled the event, how that spider bit him. Not just that, cross-species genetics, Naruto muttered, making Mary Jane look at him. What? She asked him. Making sure no one was hearing them, Naruto looked at her, his voice low. Dr. Connors studies cross-species genetics. To be able to transfer animal or any other species DNA into another lifeform. Intentionally creating a new species. It's kind of like a hybrid, or that old chimera story. A being with the DNA of other species. That spider, it must have been part of the cross-species project. Naruto said in realization, he needed to get to his lab and fast. Now if he just knew how to get down. At the subconscious command, Naruto yelped as he became unstuck. Yelling as he fell to the ground, he moved quick and grabbed onto a fire escape. Sighing in relief, he climbed up and took the stairs down. Making it to the ground, he made his way quickly. Making it to his house, he said a quick, "Homerly wasn't feeling good. I'll bind the lab." To his blinking aunt and uncle, Naruto sat in his lab in front of his microscope. He had taken a sample of his blood and was looking at it. What he saw shocked him. His DNA was changed. It was as if the bite from the spider added something to it. His molecules were different with new cells. Even with his experience in science and biology, he didn't think something like this was possible. Sure, he knew Oscorp, Dr. Connors, and his father worked on this. But it sounded like it was something that would take years to accomplish. So then, how am I different? He thought to himself. Taking the sample out from under the scope, Naruto put his hand under the lens. Looking, he gasped when he saw small hairs growing from his fingertips. Spider hair, similar to the hairs on a spider's legs that helped them climb walls, he had them too. Narrowing his eyes, he walked to the wall. Looking down at his hands, he gently pressed his fingers on it. Giving a gentle tug, he felt a slight suction. Pressing his other hand, pulled himself up. He gasped when he began crawling up the wall like a spider. He was actually defying gravity and his weight and climbing up the vertical surface with just his hands and feet. Making all the way to the ceiling, he was amazed at what he was able to do. Only one thought went through his head. I've got to tell MJ. Mary Jane Watson was Naruto Parker's best friend in the whole world. Since first grade, they have been inseparable. They would always be there for one another, even signing up for the same clubs and activities together. They had long ago made a promise to never keep a secret from the other, no matter how embarrassing. Hell, they even gave the other their first kiss. Sitting in a bench at the park, a young 12-year-old Naruto and Mary Jane sat uncomfortably. Looking at the other, they closed their eyes tightly and puckered their lips. Leaning in, they pecked the other's lips. Eyes widening, they quickly separated and gagged. The two would always worry about one another, such as this case as MJ was walking to Naruto's house with a frown. She was really worried when Naruto suddenly grabbed his head in pain in class. And he didn't come back after being allowed to go to the restroom. She feared something happened to him when she and Harry went to the restroom to see if he was still there. Harry went in, and came back out, saying he wasn't there. They checked the nurse's office, only to be told that Naruto didn't show up. With Naruto's bag in her hand to return to him, she hoped he had instead went home. Along with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, MJ has always been there for the blonde. She had hoped that when he left the hospital, he would be back to his annoying, silly, fun-loving, and cute self. Suddenly, her cell phone rang. Taking it out, her eyes widened when she saw it was Naruto. She quickly answers, "Naruto, are you okay? You didn't come back." She was cut off. "MJ, get to my lab as fast as you can. Hurry," was all she heard before she was hung up. Now she was really worried. So she began running toward the Parker house as fast as she could. Getting there, she knocked loudly on the door. "Hello, anyone there?" she called out. After a few seconds of no answer, she tried the knob. It was unlocked. Gulping nervously, She opened the door and walked in. "Hello, Naruto. Aunt May, Uncle Ben," she called. The living room was empty, and it was dark. Shivering in fear, she cautiously walked it. Luckily she was a 3-year black belt in karate. Looking around, she entered the kitchen. There was a plate of food in the table. Stepping forward, she placed a hand over the plate. It was still warm. Getting scared, she gulped. She jumped when she heard a loud thud. It came from Naruto's lab downstairs. Reaching out, she grabbed a rolling pin and held it tightly in her hands. She slowly began moving toward the open door to the basement. Looking down, she saw that the lights were on. She swallowed hard. Naruto, MJ, down here," she heard him call to her. She didn't hear a panic in his voice. Calming her down a bit, but still remained cautious. She slowly began walking down the steps, the creaking of boards not helping her mood. When she made it down, she looked around the lab. She saw all his equipment, but didn't see any sign of her blonde crush. Still holding her makeshift weapon, she walked further in slowly. "Naruto," she said. "MJ, up here." Cautiously looking up, Mary Jane let out a shriek when she spotted Naruto, laying upside down on the ceiling. Ah! Naruto flinched at the loud scream. He should have expected this. Mary Jane dropped the pin, and fell back on the floor. She crawled back as Naruto fell down and landed on his feet. He held his hands up to the scared redhead. "Whoa whoa whoa, MJ, calm down. No, get away," MJ begged as she crawled all the way back to the wall. Naruto moved toward her and grabbed her by the shoulders, making her struggle. "No, don't hurt me, MJ, calm down, it's me, Naruto." Naruto shouted at her, hoping to calm her down. MJ still struggled against his grasp for a minute, before she slowly began to calm down, making him sigh in relief. Once she stopped fighting, she slowly looked at Naruto's blue eyes. Panting, she stared at him as he slowly let go of her shoulders. "Naruto," she muttered, to which he nodded. She pointed a shaking finger at him, then at the ceiling. "Why, you were just..." "The ceiling. You just..." She tried to respond to what she just saw. Kneeling down, Naruto cupped her face, staring into her green eyes as he helped her calm herself. "MJ, deep breaths. I need you to calm down so I can explain." Nodding, the redhead took deep breaths, and once she was calm, he explained his discovery, demonstrating as he climbed the walls. By the end, she was sitting on the chair, trying to make sense of all that she heard, while Naruto sat vertically on the wall on his back and feet, hands on his knees. "Okay," MJ began slowly, trying to understand everything. "So that spider that bit you wasn't an ordinary spider?" Naruto shook his head. No doubt it was a test subject for the cross-species project. "It must have escaped from its cage somehow, and found me," he theorized. MJ nodded slowly, looking at him and how he was sticking to the wall. "So, you became some kind of human spider?" she asked. Naruto scoffed as he gave her a deadpan look. "Do you see me having hair covering my body?" he asked, gesturing to himself. MJ shivered at the disgusting though of Naruto being some kind of hairy creature. "The best I can get is that the radioactive spider somehow gave me spider-like abilities. It was what Oscorp was going for. Pass on the abilities of animals into humans. So I have spider-like abilities." Mary Jane raised a brow at him. "Spider powers. Well, that would explain the whole wall climbing thing," she said, before a smirk grew on her face. "So, does that mean you'll be able to shoot webbing out of your ass?" She couldn't help herself, and laughed at the glare he sent her. "Very funny," he muttered, not finding the joke as funny as she thought. MJ laughed, shaking her head. Sorry, couldn't help myself," she apologized as she finished laughing. Her look then softened. "That reminds me, where are Aunt May and Uncle Ben?" Naruto stepped down from the wall, getting better at figuring out how to stick and unstick surprisingly quickly. He walked to his computer, typing in somethings, said they were going to the store to get groceries. Mary Jane had brought down the food Aunt May left for him, the empty plate on the table. MJ nodded as she joined him. "So, what now?" she asked. Looking at her, Naruto shrugged. "Don't know. I mean, what am I supposed to do with these abilities?" "Study them. Maybe become famous." I have no idea how this happened. I mean, I know how it happened. But Oscorp is still testing the cross-species experiments. How am I able to do this? MJ shrugged. Maybe you're just lucky. You do have some amazing luck. She reminded, recalling all the games he won when they went to the fair. Naruto never lost once. He was also great at card games. Naruto shook his head as he moved to another table, this one cluttered in papers and files. You know I don't believe in luck. No, it's something else. He picked up a folder and a journal. Walking back, he handed MJ the folder. Check this out. It's the information my dad had when he was working on the CS project. He was almost able to finish the project, but died before he could test the final product. MJ flipped through the file, reading the information on it. While she couldn't understand some of it, she got the gist. Well, maybe Oscorp finished it. I mean, they do have some of the best scientists apart from Reed Richards, Bruce Banner, and Philip Urich working for them. She suggested, but Naruto shook his head negatively as he opened the journal. I very much doubt it. In my father's journal, he spoke of how the formula held a special compound. One only he knew. He never told anyone what it was, not even Kurt Connors. And nothing else could be used as a replacement. Even if Oscorp found something that the formula could use, it would turn out incomplete, an error. Without the secret ingredient, the current formula shouldn't work. In fact, I should be dead, he said, making Mary Jane gasp. Naruto sighed as he ran a hand through his hair. It just doesn't make sense. If Oscorp didn't have my dad's complete formula, how am I a, well, successful test subject? He asked rhetorically. Mary Jane bit her lip, not knowing how to answer it. The two stood in silence for a bit. MJ then spoke. Well, let's look on the bright side, she said, getting Naruto to look at her. I mean, you feel fine, right? Naruto nodded. He did feel fine. Great, in fact. The pain was gone, his head was cleared up, and he felt energized. He chalked it up to his body getting used to the cross-species formula. True, while the whole spider abilities are shocking, at least I'm not some giant spider thing, he said with a smirk, making Mary Jane smile, glad he was okay. So, what now? You gonna peep in the girls' changing room from the ceiling? MJ asked with a teasing grin. She was joking, of course. She would kill Naruto if he did that. Giving the redhead a look, Naruto scoffed at that. Sure, a small part of this though. On the idea for a second, he decided to ignore it. Sighing, he sat down on his chair, putting the journal on the desk. Or at least he tried to. Curing, he tried to get the journal to unstick from his hand. MJ watched with a raised brow as Naruto pulled as hard as he could to get it off. Once he did, he tried to maintain his posture. Ahem. Anyway, no, I don't know what I'm going to do. In fact, the only thing I can come up with is experiment on my blood. See what makes me so special, and see what I can come up with, he stated. Mary Jane grabbed another chair, and sat down next to him. Naruto raised a brow when he saw something spark in her eyes. Wheel, maybe you can use your new powers and that big brain of yours for a certain job, she offered. Naruto looked at her in suspicion. What sort of job? He asked, grinning at him. MJ took his laptop and began typing. Naruto watched her with a raised eyebrow, mentally questioning what she was doing. When she was done, she turned the laptop to him. Seeing what was on the screen, Naruto's eyes widened before she looked at the grinning MJ like she was crazy. On the screen were images of Iron Man, Captain America, the Avengers, and other superheroes. MJ wanted him to be a superhero. Are you crazy? He asked her. There was no way he was going to become a superhero and go on such a life-risking job. Oh, come on. You have any idea how cool it would be if my best friend was a superhero? Not to mention the publicity I could give you if I worked for the Daily Bugle, she begged, but Naruto was not having it. Nah, no way, ain't doing it. I'm not risking my life on some insane plan. If there's one thing I know about superhero business, is that their lives are always on the line, he said, making MJ pout. She was about to keep trying, but soon the two heard the door open and the voices of Mei and Ben. Standing up, Naruto went to greet them. with MJ behind him, still trying to convince him. A few weeks have passed since Naruto gained his spider powers. In those weeks, he's been testing the attributes and limits of his new powers. For one thing, his strength has increased more than what it was already. Even when he was a kid, he was stronger than a normal boy. He could punch a man in the stomach at 10 and bring them to his knees, coughing. Now, he is able to lift up weights at 300 pounds like they were nothing but feathers. Hell, using the old abandoned junkyard, he was able to lift up a freaking car with only a little strain. His speed and agility was also incredible. In school, he held the top spot for fastest runner, even being given the option of joining the track team. He was able to steal a few cookies from the kitchen and make it back to his room without Aunt May, who was in the kitchen, even knowing. In 3 seconds, using the school track on the weekend, he could run 20 miles in just under 3 minutes. And using a tennis ball launcher, he was able to dodge them all easily. It was as if time just slowed down while he moved normally. His durability was also enhanced. As shown when he got caught in a fight with a couple of college teens, he got punched in the face, and barely even felt it, much less leave a mark. Hell, one time when he was studying on the roof, he accidentally fell off thanks to a stupid squirrel, don't ask, and got up easily. Not a damn thing broken. His balance was inhuman, as he was able to lift and hold up his whole body with just a finger, while standing up top of the old building in the junkyard. And when he walked, be it a pole, a fence, or anything narrow, he had complete and total balance. That would make a yoga instructor turn green with envy. Hell, one time, just for kicks, he stood on top of the school's flagpole. Luckily no one saw him. In a non-related topic, with his new balance and agility, he totally gets high air on his skateboard. You're looking at the next Tony Hawk. He was also very flexible, proven when he joined one of Aunt May's yoga classes, and was able to bend his body in impossible ways without years of training. He was a human pretzel. He could bend backwards, and touch his toes without even breaking his spine. Needless to say, the whole class was impressed. Added with his improved agility, speed, new reflexes, and experience in boxing and martial arts, and he could be a deadly fighter. Another thing he figured out was what was the tingling he had felt when he was about to get hit by that car. Doing some studying on human psychology and the brain, he found out it was like a sixth sense, like an early warning sign in his brain that let him know there was trouble heading his way before it happened. It was like a primal instinct. MJ joked and called it a spider sense. All in all, these new powers made him even more than the above-average human he was before. Something else he discovered was that his brain power had also been affected. He was smarter now, way smarter than he was before. He was able to take apart the toaster, tweak a little, and put it all back in minutes. It now burned toast in seconds and it comes out golden brown. He was able to dismantle his server, and actually boost up its processing network to lightspeed. He could also read a whole 2 pages in seconds, and remember every word, finishing the whole book in under 2 minutes. If he kept studying at this speed, he would be almost as smart and knowledgeable in science and chemistry as his parents. He also took up inventing, much more than he had before. While he wasn't going to go with MJ's idea of being a superhero, he decided to use his spider theme to his creativity. With the money he saved up from doing chores and odd jobs over the years, he bought Oscorp specialized spider silk cartridges that held webbing as strong as steel and sticky like glue. He bought some Stark Enterprise gadgets online. With some free time on his hands, he spent many days in his lab, tinkering around, and after many web blasts to the face as well as MJ when she helped him, he was able to create customized small gauntlets using a high-pressure system that when a trigger is pressed, launches a line of strong webbing. The webbing is made out of sheer thinning liquid, that when in contact with the air, the long-chain polymer knits and forms an extremely tough, flexible fiber with extraordinary adhesive properties. Though the web fluid's adhesive quality diminishes rapidly with exposure to air, and so the webbing dissolved an hour after use. The webbing was strong enough to lift up his desk and hold up a large cement block. Even more, Naruto even came up with the ingenious idea of using the webbing as a form of travel like a spider, from point to point. The first test trial proves painful, as well as the second and third. So he decided to start SMALL and used the rusty chain hanging from the ceiling in the old junk building to practice swinging. Hey, at least the webs hold weight. Check this out, MJ said as she shoved a sheet of paper into Naruto's face. It was the middle of the school day, and the two were in their 5th period, last class of the day. Naruto blinked as he took the paper. Raising a brow at her, Naruto looked at the paper. It was a flyer. Wrestle Night. Match Showdown. Crusher vs. Bonesaw. Addition to an exhibition match. Last 5 minutes in the ring with Crusher, and win $5,000. Blinking at the news, he looked up at the smiling face of Mary Jane. Oh, please don't tell me. With your abilities, we can totally win the prize money, she said, leaning closer to him in a mutter as the other students chatted around them. Naruto groaned as he held his head. This girl's goanna kill me. He though in exhaustion. Yet another one of MJ's insane idea. However, I do need more money. I can only get so much from paper delivery. And I need more equipment for my lab. Can't believe I'm doing this. He sighed. Fine, I'll do it. He resigned to his fate. MJ pouted. Oh come on. You can totally did you say yes? She asked, eyes wide that he actually agreed. Naruto rarely agrees to her ideas. Was this actually happening? Naruto sighed again and nodded. He gasped when Mary Jane launched at him and hugged him tightly. His cheeks burned red, while everyone around them gasped and began muttering to one another. Great, I can hear the rumors now, he thought as he tried to pull MJ off him. According to the flyer, the match was in 2 weeks, which according to MJ, was enough time to make you your wrestling costume. He was really dreading seeing his costume. He sure hoped it wasn't silly. In the meantime, he would need to prepare himself for the fight. While he was experienced in combat with his martial arts classes and boxing, it was nothing compared to the experience of wrestling champions. Luckily, he had math on his side. So, he watched and replayed several of Crusher's matches, and the matches of other wrestlers. As he watched, he would calculate and theorize the various weights, speed, and mass used by the wrestlers. He already came up with several solutions against wrestlers. First, nearly all wrestlers focus mostly on their strength, durability, and stamina. They train mostly on their arms and chest to grapple and punch as well as push down their opponents. They also train to take many hits and stay up. If he wanted to stand a chance on lasting against Crusher, with his slim and small structure compared to an 7-foot-tall building of muscle, he would need to focus on speed, agility, and overpowering his stamina with his own. As the saying goes, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Besides, the flyer said he just needed to last 5 minutes against Crusher. He didn't necessarily needed to beat the guy. So he would just have to focus on dodging and slipping from his grasps. As a scientist, or future scientist, collecting all the data was very important. Every theory, every formula, every variable needed to be calculated in order to work the experiment correctly. Though he had to work in secret, as he didn't want Aunt May or Uncle Ben to find out, especially his aunt, as she didn't like such violent events and would ground him for a month if she found out. Thank God for his lab and private time. In the meantime, he continued practicing with his spider powers and new web shooter. He had gotten better at web swinging, and with his enhanced agility, he was swinging throughout the building tops like Tarzan. He could also shoot web out in bullets for fast strikes. And thanks to some persuasion, he got Flash and Kong to help him practice for when he wanted to try out for football. Hey! Like dodging bulls in a bullfight. The 2 weeks have gone by, and the fight was tomorrow night. He got a text from MJ, saying that his new suit was done, and would be coming by later to show him. Currently, Naruto was sitting on the dinner table with Ben and May, eating while he talked about his day. So Flash and Kong decided to be idiots, and plugged all the bathroom toilets on the 2nd floor. Before flushing them all at once. Needless to say, the school will be closed for a few days while they fix the sewer mess in the hall. He recapped, making Ben laugh while May rolled her eyes with a sigh. Oh man, now that's rich, Ben said, Naruto agreeing with a nod. Please, you kids keep doing dangerous things. Why, I'll never know, she muttered. Ben shot her an amused look. Now, doing stupid and dangerous things is what makes things fun. Remember when we were stupid and dangerous? He said, remembering when he was Naruto's age, he, Richard, and the IR friends would get in all sorts of trouble. Mei scoffed as he went back to her food. No. Ben looked at the amused Naruto. Trust me, Naruto chuckled. Finishing up their food and cleaning their plates, Ben turned to leave. It was then that Naruto noticed his uncle had his pants rolled up and was barefoot. Where's the flood? He joked. Without looking back, Ben motioned him to follow him. Follow me, I'll show you. Naruto raised a brow. You serious? He asked, looking at his aunt. Mei smiled at him and gestured him to go. Sighing, Naruto followed his uncle. They went to the garage in the back of the house. Standing in front of the plumbing system, Naruto saw a small pool of water gathering on the floor. I think it's a condenser tray, Ben suggested. Naruto looked at the tubes. He shook his head. No, too much water for the condenser tray, or the heat exchange tubbing. It's gotta be the filling. Ben nodded his head slowly, impressed at his nephew's knowledge. That's the only thing that makes sense then. Can you fix it? He asked, but Naruto. No, not tonight. I'll go by the hardware store tomorrow. The fight wasn't until 8 o'clock at night, so he should have plenty of time to get the stuff he needed and fix the plumbing before he goes and gets his bones broken. Hey, he might seem confident, but he was going to be going head to head against professional wrestlers. The biggest guy he fought in his life was Flash, and that guy was a flea compared to those gorillas. More and more he was seriously starting to regret agreeing to MJ's plan. Ben nodded as he grabbed some of the boxes on the floor before they got wet from the water. All right then, do me a favor and check some of the boxes. See if there's anything worth saving. Naruto nodding, Ben left. Moving to the boxes, Naruto placed them above floor level and looked through them. He chuckled when he saw cassette tapes and old phones of his aunt and uncle back when they were young. Wow, he said when he spotted an old photo of Ben when he was a teenager, wearing, to Naruto's point of view, bizarre clothes. You were really rocking the 70s, Uncle Ben, he said before he continued looking. Suddenly, he froze when he spotted something familiar. Picking it up, he saw that it was his dad's leather briefcase, the same one he saw back when his dad's office was first broken into. His fingers ran through the front, feeling the leather. His mind flashed back to that night. He recalled the look on his dad's face when he was searching through his desk, and anger and panic in his face when he discovered something was taken. That night was so terrible to him, Naruto forgot about it. What had you so scared, Dad? He muttered. Just then, he felt his phone vibrate. Taking one last glance at the briefcase, Naruto took his phone out. It was a text from MJ. I'm here. Let's get to your lab. Looking once more at the case, he made his decision and took it with him. Naruto's lab. Mary Jane had many attributes to her. With her desiring to one day become a reporter, she was not afraid to get herself into bad situations, be it fights or something else. She was a determined person, going beyond lengths to get what she wanted. And she was also not above dragging others with her into the crossfire. An example being using Naruto's new superhuman abilities to win money in a fight. She knew it was dangerous, and that Naruto could get hurt. Believe her, she was just as scared and would mentally berate herself for this, but she knew her best friend. Naruto was the kind of person who won't take a charge into action unless someone pushed him. Naruto had a great future on his hands, MJ knew that without a doubt. And with his basic skills, added in with his new spider powers, he now had the potential to one day be a great superhero. And it was her job as his best friend to help him realize it. So, locking the door to the basement with a work in session. Do not disturb unless emergency, sign on the door. MJ sat on the chair with her back to Naruto as he tried on the costume she made him. On her lap was her design book. She had to say, she'd truly outdone herself with this. Years ago, her aunt made her take a knitting and design class to be a proper young lady, as she was acting too much of a tomboy for her liking. And as much as Mary Jane would hate to admit it, her new skills really paid off. She showed to have quite a talent for knitting and creating outfits. Half of Naruto and Harry's wardrobes contained shirts she made for them. A little secret of MJ, she had a small enthusiasm to superheroes and their costumes. Naruto called it a fetish, much to her anger. Ever since Naruto told her about his newly granted powers, she's been designing sketches of superhero costumes for him, behind his back of course. At first, she went with a wild look, something with a fox area, given his whisker marks and narrow eyes. While it made him hot, she decided to use something with spiders, given his wall crawling and web shooters. The first thing that popped to her mind was spandex. After all great heroes wore spandex, was her excuse. It had nothing to do with the secret desire to s.e.e. the blonde's muscles tighten against the outfit. Yep, absolutely nothing to do with that. However, she knew Naruto would never go for it, so she decided to start small and modernish. So after many papers and ideas, she picked out the initial design before they got better material. And so, after many money well spent in knitting, she came up with something. Okay, I'm ready, I think, she heard Naruto say, and with expecting eyes, MJ turned around. Her eyes widened in delight at what she saw. Front to bottom up, Naruto was wearing reddish-brown footwear similar to yoga shoes, leaving the toes and heel exposed. Made out of hard material for easy wear and protection for the bottom of the feet. For pants, he wore a black, rubber-like that could be that or similar to neoprene used for wetsuits. It went down to the ankle, with the shins protected in guards. For the upper body, he wore a black sleeveless shirt, and a black and red jacket with a hood. He had elbow guards and red fingerless. Gloved with Naruto's web shooters on the wrist. With the jacket zipped up, it displayed a black spider in the front. MJ wanted Naruto's identity to be a secret, so she made a red breathable mask that completely covered his whole head with eyes holes, which were currently covered by the goggles Naruto put on. All in all, Naruto looked completely mysterious and man-made. Link in profile. Spider-Man's 15/16 costume would be redesigned. MJ stood up, a wide smile on her face. You look great, she said, amazed at her work. She also had to admit that Naruto really worked red and black just as much as he worked orange and back. Even with the bright blonde hair, he made the look work. Naruto rolled his eyes as he took of the mask. I look ridiculous, he muttered as he ran a hand through his hair. He sure hoped wearing the mask didn't give him the Beatles haircut. He liked his wild hair. Just then, a thought came to him. I just realized something. We're both only 16, he pointed out, gesturing back and forth between the two. And I'm pretty sure it's illegal to participate in a match if you're not 18 or older. He said. MJ just waved him off. Don't worry about it. With the mask, no one will know your real age. And my cousin Ron's driving us, so he can sign you up. While I set up the bet pool, she said, thumbing her chest in pride. Naruto gave her a deadpan look. He was on the thray out of having his bones broken by a 300-plus-pound man, and she was going to bet on him. How is that fair? He pointed a finger at her. If we got to jail because of this, I am never talking to you again. He threatened before he went to his desk to make sure his web shooters were functioning properly. MJ just smiled, fully confident that this will work. 85% sure. Tonight was the night. Naruto had gone to the hardware store, got the supplies, and helped Uncle Ben fix the plumbing. After a night dinner, he packed his wrestling costume in his backpack and was ready to meet with MJ and her cousin in the latter's car outside. His image was one of confidence. He had never done something like this before, so he was running on adrenaline as much as he could, before he got common sense and backed out. All right, Aunt May, Uncle Ben, me and MJ are going to the library to work on our reports. Naruto called out to them. That was his excuse, and it made him feel guilty at having to lie to them. All right, dear, you have your wallet and money for snacks? His aunt asked him. Yeah, oh, and we don't know how long we'll take, so I might be home a bit late. He said. He didn't know how many fighters there were going to be, or if he had to do some sort of preliminary matches before he could face Crusher. Okay, just make sure to call us at 10 to let us know. Okay, now you be careful out there, Naruto. Ben told him, looking at his nephew over his newspaper. You don't know what hooligans are out there at night. Naruto nodded. I will. See ya, Naruto said and stepped out of the house. Maki. ing his way toward the car in front of the house with MJ and her cousin in it. As the door closed, Ben frowned a bit. He could always tell when Naruto was lying, and he knew that there was something the blonde was keeping from them. However, he trusted his nephew, surrogate son, and knew he wasn't going to do something bad. That was just not the kind of person he was. He would trust Naruto on whatever he was going to do. The drive to the arena took approximately 20 minutes with traffic, and another 10 minutes to find a parking space. Walking inside, they saw that it was packed with both audience members and contestants. Ron told them that he would go sign Naruto up, MJ giving him a piece of paper. When Ron was first told that Mary Jane's friend would be entering a wrestling contest against a professional, he was against the idea. Haven met Naruto. MJ said that Naruto would be fine, making up a slight lie by saying that it was recently discovered that Naruto was a mutant who just unlocked his power. Ron was a supporter for mutants, having mutant friends himself. He was told that Naruto would be able to take care of himself, with the promise to pull out if it looked like it would be too much for the blonde. As Ron went to the sign-in desk, MJ dragged Naruto around, looking at all the contestants. Many of the guys were hairless gorillas, standing at 7 feet with bulging muscles that looked like they could crush coconuts with just their arms. Naruto cringed when one actually did crack a coconut with his muscles, and then drank it. The blonde gulped as he imaged it being his skull that was cracked. Even MJ was having second thoughts about doing this. What kind of best friend was she to send her BF crushed to his presumable death? What was she, high on sugar again? She let out a shriek when two wrestlers began fighting. Naruto grabbed her hand and led her away. Okay, you know what, I changed my mind. You're not doing this. Naruto looked at her in surprise. What happened to the, I know you can win this? Whiskers. What about all the hours of planning? The costume? He asked her as they stopped in a semi-vacant section of the lobby. MJ shook her head. I was crazy, all right. I was too focused on the money and overconfident on your new powers. I didn't think about you or your Heath. But now, this is insane. I can't let you risk your life just because I said so. There was panic in her voice as she held her head. Hoping to calm her down before she had a panic attack, Naruto put his hands on her shoulder. MJ, look at me. When she did, he smiled softly at her. Listen, it's okay. I want to do this. He revealed, much to the redhead's surprise. This match would be a great way to test the capabilities of my powers and skills. I know it's dangerous, but that's what makes the experience necessary. Being put in real-life danger is what I need to reach my potential. But, you could get hurt. She argued. Naruto nodded. Yes, but it was my decision to go along with this. And I'm fully prepared for the consequences. He said. MJ was about to keep arguing, but was cut off as the two saw Ron heading their way. He held up a small piece of paper, which they could see had a number on it. Okay Naruto, got spot number. The matches were set up in a come all out, battle tournament. One by one, contestants were sent out to battle Crusher. If the contestant was defeated, the next one was sent. If a contestant somehow won and beat Crusher, the winner would be given the option of taking the title, and chance to sign a contract. There were 10 contestants before Naruto, with him being the last and shortest of them. Naruto, MJ, and Ron were allowed to watch the matches in the audience with front row seats. As the two teenagers watched the matches, they would occasionally flinch at some of the extremely violent scenes shown. MJ would bury her face into Naruto's shoulder when a Crusher bent his opponent's spine on his knee, no doubt breaking the poor bastard back and spine. Even with so many opponents, Crusher would beat them all easily, and never once tire out too much. Soon it was Naruto's turn, at which MJ looked ready to grab her reaned and run away from that place as fast as she could. The blonde was led by the staff, being forced to block out MJ's shouts to not do this. Even Ron looked ready to cancel this plan, but was too late. Naruto was given 5 minutes to change into his costume. Behind the curtains, Naruto took a deep breath to calm his nerves. He distracted himself by running through the formulas in his head. He calculated the mass and weight of Crusher from what he's seen. Calculated the estimated weight of the wrestler's opponents and their speed. Crusher was a giant, focusing solely on his strength and weight. to keep himself firmly on the ground to withstand being pushed back. However, Naruto had seen several weaknesses he could use. Firstly, Crusher was slow, gaining muscle power, but losing speed and agility, which Naruto had in spades. Also, due to his massive figure, his back was his blind spot. So he should just focus on that. He just needed to use his speed and agility to his advantage, and last only 5 minutes to win $5,000. The most the previous fighters lasted was 3 minutes before they were taken out. As long as he stayed confident, he would make it, he hoped. There was a call behind the curtain. It was time. Mary Jane bit her lip nervously as the crowd around her roared in enthusiasm for the next match. She had initially betted $300 on Naruto against everyone betting on Crusher. However, money was the last thing on her mind right now. She just sent her BFF to his death. Just then, the ring announcer stepped in the middle of the ring. Crusher was in his corner, getting pampered by his ring maidens. The spotlight shined down on it as the room turned darker, the mic in hand. "Are you ready for more?" he asked, to which the crowd roared massively. I said, "Are you ready for more?" MJ flinched from the loud screaming. Her ears hurting. Get ready for the next victim. If he can withstand just 5 minutes in the cage with Crusher, he will perhaps win $5,000. He said, making everyone cheer. The announcer pointed to the curtains in the entrance, where a silhouette was seen standing behind it. Introducing the challenger, the terrifying, the deadly, the amazing Spider. He curtains pulled back to show Naruto in his red and black costume. Behind his goggles, Naruto deadpanned. "This is the last time I let MJ pick the name." The Spider wasn't exactly a terrifying wrestling name. The audience booed at the masked blonde as he walked calmly down to the ring. He easily dodged food and eggs thrown at him, thanks to his spider sense. The ring maidens sent him predatory looks, taunting him and his size compared to Crusher. Ignoring them, Naruto glanced over the MJ, seeing the worried look she sent him. Frowning, he looked at Crusher, who was looking at him with mocking eyes. Amused at seeing what he was no doubt thinking, small little man. Bastard was underestimating him. Narrowing his eyes in anger, briefly flashing red, he growled lowly. Deciding to begin with a show, Naruto, the Spider, bended his legs, and with a small leap, jumped into the ring easily. That display made some of the audience cheer, and making Crusher frown with narrow eyes. The two fighters glaring at one another. Naruto's glare unseen, they sized the other from their sides of the ring. As they did that, the announcer continued. "And for a special treat, bring down the cage." Naruto blinked at that. "Bring down the what now?" MJ gasped in horror when a metal bar cage was lowered down around and over the ring. "Naruto," she shouted in great worry, Ron putting a hand on her shoulder to calm her down. That he was calm about this himself. Okay. Maybe he was irresponsible. Naruto looked around wildly at the cage. This wasn't part of the plan. The announcer had got out of the ring before the cage was lowered. Will the guard lock the cage? Naruto ran to the bars as the staff placed locks on the corners. Hey, wait a minute. There was nothing about a cage in the flyer. Hey, little man. Freezing. Naruto looked back at Crusher who stood ready in the middle of the ring. The large man was looked at Naruto like a predator. His grin was deadly and dark. He held up a finger pointed at him. You ain't going nowhere. 5 minutes. He held up 5 fingers. 5 minutes of playtime. The bell rang and the clock started. With a roar, Crusher charged at Naruto. Eyes widening, Naruto moved quick and jumped right over the large man. The crowd gasped at the abnormal jump as Naruto landed behind Crusher. The man turning around, he glared at the masked teen. Growling, he charged again to try and get a hold on the Spider. Spider senses going off, Naruto jumped up high and grabbed onto the top bars. He planted his feet on the bars, and hung from the top on his hands and knees. Facing down at Crusher as the man looked up at him in surprise. What are you doing up there? Naruto shrugged. You look dirty and I didn't want to get sick. He said, making the wrestler growl. Ah, did I hurt your feelings, princess? Hey, I got a question. How did you get your clothes on with all that muscle? Hell, how can you even move? He asked, making Crusher even more angry. Deciding make a move, Naruto released his hold on the top and fell downward. Flipping over, he planted a foot slam on Crusher's face. He back-flipped backward, landing on his hands and feet. Body low like a spider as Crush staggered back. Shaking his head, the man glared hatefully at Naruto. Hearing a whistle, he saw one of his maidens hand him a chair. Smirking wickedly, he charged at Naruto. Eyes widening, Naruto pushed off the groan and slid under Crusher as he lifted the chair over him. Sliding under the man, he got up on his hands, and spinning like a top, side-kicked Crusher, making him grunt at the powerful strike, and drop the chair. Shooting a line of web, Naruto grabbed the chair and pulled it toward him. Grabbing it, he threw it up to the ceiling, and shooting a ball of webbing at it, stuck it to the top. With Crusher weaponless and slightly dazed, Naruto charged and sent a flying kick at Crusher's back. The man gave a shout of surprise when he was sent flying forward fast, crashing front first into the bars. The audience were in awe at what they were seeing. A little man, skinnier and shorter than Crusher, was lasting longer against the wrestler than any of them would have thought. Shaking his head, Crusher turned around, leveling a glare at the red, black-clad masked team. Growling, he looked out the ring at his girls. One of them nodded. ND took out an iron bar from under the stage. Grabbing it, he ran at Spider. Seeing this, Naruto went on the defense, dodging all the strikes. Ducking under a swipe, he jumped back. Backing into a corner, Naruto watched as Crusher charged at him. Looking down at the wrestler's feet, Naruto shot a glop of web at his foot. Crusher staggered in place and looked down at his foot trapped to the floor in webbing. Glaring, he looked up at the Spider, only to receive a punch to the face. He fell down on his back, his head in a daze. Getting up, Naruto blinked when he heard the cheers and chants of his name. Looking at the exited crown, he turned to where MJ was, only to see her smiling happily at him. Smiling under his mask, he raised his fists up, erupting a louder cheering. Just then, his spider senses went off. Behind him, Crusher had removed his trapped foot by taking off his boot. Grabbing his bar, he sneakered behind Spider, raising the bar above him. Shooting 2 lines of webbing above him, Naruto pulled himself up and above the wrestler. Taken by surprise, Crusher looked up, and was blinded by a double stomp to the face and head. He crashed down into the ground, knocked out and down for the count. The bell rang as Naruto got up. The cage lifted up as the crowd cheered massively. The announcer jumped into the ring, and grabbed Naruto's arm, shooting it up into the air. The winner, the amazing Spider-Man. Naruto watched as everyone in the audience stood up and cheered. MJ was howling in excitement, smiling at her best friend, glad he didn't get hurt. Smiling, he raised his fist into the air. Later, Naruto stood in front of the promoter's desk, waiting to collect his money. MJ went to get her betting money with Ron going with her to keep her safe. The promoter placed an envelope in front of Naruto. Here you go. Not get out of here. Picking up the envelope, Naruto opened it and counted the money inside. Narrowing his eyes, he glared at the man. Hey, there's only $500 here. It's supposed to be $5,000. Wrong, kid. The contract was $5,000 for 5 minutes. You won in a minute and 10 seconds. For that, you get $500. And you're lucky to get it. You made my best fighter look like a girl out there. Enraged at the bastard, Naruto shot forward and grabbed the man by the shirt and hoisted him up. Glaring at him, he didn't know his eyes bled crimson red, his pupil turning into a vertical slit. You can't do this. It's not fair. Gulping down his fear with greed, the man grunted out. And not my problem. Now let go of me before I call security. Glaring at him, Naruto soon forced himself to calm down. Eyes going back to his regular blue, he dropped the man on the floor. Glaring at him once more, Naruto scoffed and left the room, stuffing the envelope in his pocket. Exiting the room, he bypassed a man with long dark blonde hair and sunglasses as he stepped into the promoter's office. Growling under his breath at having his time wasted by joining this stupid contest, Naruto stepped in front of the elevator and pushed the down button. Looks like he was going to have MJ the bad news. Hopefully she made them enough money in the betting pool. Just as the doors opened with a ding, Naruto heard shouting behind him. Turning around, he saw the blonde man from before running out of the promoter's office, a bag under his arm. Behind him, a scruffed-up promoter ran out. Looking his way, he shouted, pointing at the running. "Help! That guy stole my money! Stop him!" A nearby security guard saw this and ran their way. "Hey you! Stop that guy!" he shouted at Naruto. Naruto raised a brow, mentally weighing his options. Making a decision, he stepped to the side, allowing the thief to get into the elevator. Before the doors closed, the man looked at the masked Naruto. "Thanks, buddy." The doors closed, and the thief got away. The security guard arrived and slammed his fist into the elevator doors. He glared at Naruto. "What the hell's the matter with you? You just let him go," he yelled at Naruto's masked face. Naruto just stared at him. Scoffing, the guard ran off, calling for backup in case they had a chance to catch the thief before he left the building. Next, the promoter rushed in front of the blonde, his left-right darkening. "You could have taken that guy apart. Now he's gonna get away with my money." Naruto just tilted his head to the side. "Not my problem," he said, repeating his own words right back at him. With an angry growl, the promoter stomped away. Naruto just focused back on the elevator and pressed the button again and waited. "Okay, so while we didn't get the prize money, I did earn enough money in the bets to where we can get some great equipment for you lab, and some materials for me," MJ said happily as she counted her new bills. Naruto was silent as he looked out the window of the car. He had changed into his normal clothes, with his costume in his bag. He thought back to how he let that thief go, and wondered if he should have stopped him. "Why should you have?" Naruto tensed when he heard that familiar dark voice again. "No, it can't be. It was a hallucination." "Oh, believe me boy, I am far from a hallucination. But it matters not. Why are you even thinking on this? That pathetic human cheated you, he deserves what came to him. In fact, you yourself should have done more than gave him a little scare. You should have killed that human, and take what was yours." Narrowing his eyes, the blonde shook his head, trying to rid himself of the voice. He could just hear its taunting chuckles right next to his ears. "Shut up. Just leave me alone. You know I am right, boy. You wanted to kill that man. Snap his neck and take the money for yourself." "You're wrong. Am I?" Naruto closed his eyes, trying to block the voice out. Meanwhile, Ron was praising Naruto on his match. "Man kid, you sure showed some skills. You even put Crusher down like nothing. You might just have a career in wrestling," he said, but Naruto just shrugged. What happened was merely a one-time deal. He had no desire of fighting big idiots on a daily basis. He was a scientist, and a semi-pacifist, as taught to him by his parents and later on Uncle Ben. Physical combat should only be used as a last resort, for words can have a powerful impact. Naruto had joined martial art classes to defend himself from bullies, BU. He would only use force if he had no other choice. Leaning his head against the window, he pushed the night's match at the back of his head, and focused primarily on the data he gained on his own powers tonight. It was strange. The way he was moving all over the place, it felt like he was fighting subconsciously. Could his spider powers have also had an effect on his mentality? There was so much he didn't know about himself it seemed, including the deal with the dark voice. He narrowed his eyes when he suddenly felt a sense of dread in his chest. Like something bad was about to happen. Hearing a gasp coming from Mary Jane, he looked up. Immediately his eye widened in horror. In front of his house were several police cars, and an ambulance. An icy grip tightened around his heart. What had happened? Once the car came to a stop, Naruto couldn't bolt out of the car fast enough and ran toward his house, MJ following quickly behind him. He pushed through cops, ignoring their calls. All he cared about was finding out what happened and to check on his aunt and uncle. What happened? Were they okay? Pushing the door open, slamming it against the wall and breaking one of the hinges with his immense strength. Naruto's eyes widened at what he saw. His Aunt May was sitting on a chair, crying into her hands. Looking up, her red eyes looked at her nephew, some relief at seeing him visible, but nearly hidden in the sea of sadness. "Aunt May!" Naruto shouted and ran to her. He checked her over, making sure she was okay. "Aunt May, what happened? Where's Uncle Ben?" "Naruto." May sobbed up. Your uncle. He. She couldn't finish and pushed herself into the blonde's chest, holding him tightly as she cried. Naruto furrowed his eyes in confusion. Just then, he saw something at the corner of his eyes. Turning his head, he gasped in horror when he spotted a body covered in a white sheet on the floor. The living room was a mess, broken glass littering the floor, picture frames and items broken. But he ignored all of that, only focusing on the body, and the arm laying out from under the sheet. An arm, with a watch. A watch he recognized anywhere. It was Uncle Ben. His whole body froze. His blood and heart stilled. His uncle was dead, the man that's been like a father to him after his real one died. He was gone, just like his parents. He faintly heard MJ arrive and gasp when she spotted the body as well. His grip on his aunt tightened, his subconscious willing the enhanced strength to diminish for the time being so as to not hurt her. She was already hurt. What happened? He asked, his eyes covered by his bangs. A nearby cop heard him and answered, giving the teen a look of pity. A burglar. He broke in, according to your aunt. Your uncle fought him to protect his wife. The man had a gun in his hand. And your uncle was shot. By the time we got here, getting a call from your aunt, the guy had run off. We've got an id on him, he said, holding up a flyer. Naruto turned his head and looked at the picture. His heart stilled when he saw it. It was the thief, the one he let go. It was his fault. His uncle died because of him. If he had stopped the guy, his uncle would have still been alive. Just then, another cop approached the first. He leaned in and muttered to him, but with his enhanced hearing, Naruto heard them perfectly. We've got a call on the guy. He's heading west at Corn Road. The blonde Parker's eyes flashed blood red. Pupils vertical and sharp, deadly. He gritted his teeth, his canines growing longer and sharpening as his whisker marks grew bolder. Gently pulling Aunt May away, he silently stood up and his aunt and MJ looked at him in confusion. MJ, look after Aunt May, all right, he muttered to his best friend. Naruto, what are you, s? He didn't get to finish as Naruto grabbed his bag and ran out the door. Naruto, Aunt May called out desperately to him. But Naruto didn't hear her. He didn't hear anyone. There was only one thing on his mind. And that was blood. The blood of the thief. Of the man who he had spared and had killed his uncle. In the back of his mind, a dark chuckle echoed out. So, you have finally came to your senses. Quote. The pathetic human had hurt your family. Killed your uncle. Quote. Time to put your new powers and skills to the real test it seems. Shut up, Naruto shouted in anger as he ran down an alley. Opening his bag, he pulled out his spider costume and began putting it on easily as he ran. Once dressed, he leapt high and stuck to a wall of a building, and began crawling up. I don't know who the fuck you are. But if you are not going to help me find the bastard, then shut the fuck up. The voice growled in a bit of anger, but decided to not react. For now, the man is your prey, boy. You are the hunter. Your new senses will be your greatest tools. You have that man's scent, use it. Leaping high into the air, Naruto landing perfectly on top of a pole. Narrowing his eyes from behind his goggles, he thought back to when he first saw the man and when he got in the elevator. When he passed by him, he had faintly caught a scent of sweat, cinnamon, and oil. Deciding to give it a shot, he took off his mask. Standing up, he inhaled through his nose. So many scents, it made him dizzy. All different and disgusting, but he stayed focused on the one he needed. His eyes closed, he focused through his other senses. His superhuman hearing could pick up dozens of sounds throughout the city. He soon found something. He could hear the sirens of police cars. Focusing on that direction, he picked up the scent he was looking for. Opening his crimson eyes, he looked at the direction it came from. Narrowing his eyes, he put his mask back on. Raising an arm, he shot a line of web at the top of a nearby building. Pushing his legs off from the pole, he began swinging from the high buildings as he headed in the direction of the police sounds. Soon, he found the source as several police cars chased after a speeding car. Where the scent of the murder came from. Growling under his breath, he chased after. Bypassing the cop cars, he leapt high in the air, and stomped down on the roof of the front car. Scarring the driver acting on panic, took out his gun and began shooting through the roof. With his spider sense, Spider dodged each bullet. When the bullet stopped, he pulled back his arm and punched right through the roof, making the thief cry in shock. The car maneuvered crazily at the surprise, but Spider held on tightly by sticking to the top of the car. Raising a hand, he shot a ball of webbing into the windshield, blocking the view. The driver cried in shock as he tried to drive, but ended up heading toward a building instead. Before the car crashed, Spider jumped away, landing on the roof of a nearby building. He watched as the car crashed, and soon the killer got out of the car and heading inside the old building. "Nowhere to hide, bastard. This Spider's coming for you," he muttered dangerously and swung to the building, crawling inside through an open window. The inside of the building was dark, with only limited lighting from the moon and nearby street lights. Crawling over the ceiling, he looked around for the bastards. Now if only he could just see. Suddenly, his vision changed. The room became a bit better with a red hue. Blinking, he saw that his vision was much better. Putting it off for later, he continued to look for the murderer. Using his hearing, he could hear the sounds of heavy breathing coming from the top floors. The thief looked out the window, seeing several cop cars arrive outside the building. In his hand was a pistol, locked and ready for quick shooting. He cursed when he saw that he was surrounded. Suddenly, he heard a creak. Turning around, he aimed at the darkness, keeping an eye for anything. As he looked around, a searchlight shining through the window, he didn't see the shadow of a figure seen crawling over the ceiling. "We have the place surrounded. Give up now," he heard the captain order. Scowling, he looked around for a way out of this situation. Just as he was about to move, he was sudden L.Y. slammed into the wall next to the window. Gasping, he saw the same guy who had let him leave the resting building. "What, you? I let you escape. That was a mistake," Spider growled out before he sent a hard punch to the guy's face, not holding back as he broke his nose and cut his cheek. That old man, he was a great person. Kind and friendly. So why did you kill him? Kneeling him hard on the stomach, he threw the guy over his shoulder, making him slam hard against one of the pillars. The man coughed as he tried to get up, feeling his spine shake from the impact. Just then, a web line caught him on the arm. Pulling the man toward him, Spider reeled back his arm and slammed a fist into his chin, breaking his jaw. Using another web line, he pulled him back like a yo-yo and slammed him hard against the wall. "Answer me, why did you kill the old man?" he roared, his fingernails dug into the man's shoulders, making him cry in pain. I went to pull on last heist before leaving the city. That's all. What about Uncle Ben? You shot him. He decided to be a hero. It was an accident. Naruto narrowed his glowing crimson eyes in anger. He pulled the man close to him. Because of you, of me, he's gone. And someone's gotta pay. Outside, the captain was ordering man to stealthily get into the building. Suddenly, everyone heard glass shatter. Looking up, they saw the mob. And they were chasing crashed through the top floor window, and falling down. Before they knew it, he crashed down hard on a police car. Checking him, they saw that he was dead. The captain looked up, and for a split second, thought he saw a figure standing at the darkness of the window. When the spotlight shined at the window, there was no one there. Naruto, Spider sat at the top side of the wall, the church bell tower. His hands covered his uncovered face as he silently cried. Because of his stupid decision, his Uncle Ben was gone. First his parents, and now him. The people that matter the world to him were gone. His family was gone. Now all he had left was his Aunt May. Running a hand through his hair, gripping the strands tightly, he cried as a logger pain gripped his heart. His phone rang, but he ignored it. It was probably just Mary Jane. He wanted to be alone. His Uncle Ben was gone. He had always been there for Naruto whenever he needed advice. But now that he was gone, what was he to do now? Through teary eyes, he looked at his hands. All this new powers, but he failed to use them for the right reasons. His uncle always said, with great power, there was always come great responsibility. But, why was he given these powers? He didn't deserve them. He wasn't worthy. But, that wasn't something his uncle would say. He would say, that he should take priority of others before himself. That now that he had these powers, He had to do the right thing. That now, it was his responsibility to help those who need it. Straightening his back, Naruto wiped away his tears. Climbing up to the top, he looked over the city. Uncle Ben, Mom, Dad, I'll miss you guys. I've taught me so much. And I promise to use your teaching to help the people of New York. To protect them, and make sure no one loses their loved ones like me. I promise to be a hero. The kind of hero you would want me to be. Maybe not as Naruto Parker, but as someone who will be a friend to the innocent, and a nightmare to criminals. From this day forth, I am Spider-Man. The alarm from a small store flared wildly as two masked men shot out from the doors, taking a run down the streets with bags on money in their grasps. However, before they could get too far, something grabbed onto them from their backs, pulling them back with a shout of surprise. Later on, two cops stood, scratching their heads in confusion as they looked up at the two burglars. They were trapped in a cocoon of what looked like web. On the cocoon, there was a small business card stuck to the cocoon. Grabbing the card, the cop looked at it, raising a brow at what it said. In a dark alley, a woman screamed as she struggled to escape the rough grasp of her assailant. She tried to scream as hard as she could, hoping someone would hear and save her. However, her voice got caught when the rapist began choking her. With a sick grin, the man began trying to take off his belt, making her eyes widen in horror. Tears began to run down her cheeks. What was about to happen to her? Suddenly, before the rapist could take off his belt, two strings of web shot down from above and stuck to his shoulders. What the? With a yell, he was pulled upward. Blinking her tears away, the woman looked around, hoping to see who or what saved her. Just then, a small card floated down to her from above. Grabbing it, she looked at it, saying what was on the card. Courtesy of your friendly neighborhood, Spider-Man. At the bottom was a red spider mark. Sitting on top of a tall building, Naruto nodded his head as he listened to his music. His mask and goggles were off as he took a bite out of his hot dog. He looked down at the busy city, keeping an eye out for any trouble. It's been nearly a month since the death of his Uncle Ben and the funeral. That day it was raining, as if the sky itself was sad at the loss of another great person. Naruto was holding his crying aunt as he looked at the casket as it was being put in the hole. He didn't say anything or even know anything. He just stared at the coffin holding his dead uncle, the rain hiding his tears. Reaching over, he took out a journal from his bag lying next to him. Opening it up, it had many formulas and diagrams of some spider-themed inventions he wanted to try out to help him. Taking out a pen, he checked his work. In the months since the funeral, Naruto had been very busy. While taking care of his aunt, buying the groceries, and occasionally going in between jobs to earn money, Naruto tried to work with his new role of being a superhero. He wanted to be the kind of man his uncle and parents wanted and knew he could be. The kind of man who would be able to use both his brain and brawn to help people. So using his skills, he helped bring down criminals and thugs around the city. Mostly working in the shadows, as he wanted to slowly bring his non-existent reputation up with the people, and then revealed himself. Which is why he always left cards with his name to spread rumors before making his debut. He would allow a glimpse of his appearance a few times to allow rumors to spread. It's been a very busy and tiring month in starting to keep the city safe. But as the saying goes, great power, great responsibility, and he wasn't alone on this. Mary Jane was helping him. Beep. Putting his dog and book down, Naruto swallowed and raised a hand to his left ear. Yeah, Whiskers. Bank robbery at East Avenue. He heard MJ say. Nodding, he finished his hot dog, crumbling the wrapper. On my way. MJ served as his informant at his base, using the wonderful information network of the internet. And an old police scanner. Using the redhead's surprising knowledge she got from reading comic books, which told the stories of old and deceased heroes of past, the two tried to make their mark in the superhero world. One of the things they got from the comics was every hero needed a base of operation. Since they couldn't afford a large tower or ice lair in the Arctic, they used Naruto's lab in his basement. They also used the old abandoned factory as a backup base. Money was used for Naruto's inventions, or sewing material for MJ. Not to mention buying Oscorp spider silk for his web shooters. Those things weren't cheap, you know. However, they would need to find another way to get webbing to prevent shipping from being tracked to them. Sure, they might be using a false billing. Thanks to the help from MJ's cousin Ron, who's been a great help and ally to the Blonde's hero startup, but they would need to be very careful on their actions. Naruto was currently trying to reproduce the webbing's formula in his lab to create his own artificial webbing. He was almost there, just a few more testing and he should be able to make his own web in a few days. He just needed to get a few chemical compounds and he should have it. Crumbling the wrapper, he threw it over his shoulder. It sailed over the air, flying over the edge of the building and dunking into the open dumpster on the other side of the building. Putting his journal in his bag, he stood up. Clapping his hands of crumbs and dirt, he stretched a bit. Just then, his phone rang. Pulling it out of his pocket, he saw who was the caller and answered it. "What's up, Aunt May? Eggs and milk? Okay, I'll get them. Love you too." Hanging up, grabbed his bag and put it on. He raised his hand and pressing middle and ring fingers against his palm. He activated his web shooter and shot a web line at the building across the street. Holding onto the line tight, he pushed off the building edge and sailed through the air, shooting web at another building to change direction. It's been a month since he first became Spider-Man, and his journey was just starting. Later, Parker residence. After taking care of a few more thugs, and grabbing the eggs and milk his aunt asked for, Naruto retired back to his lab. He was currently sitting in his craft desk, working on a new invention. While sitting in front of his computer was MJ. Going through newspapers and current news websites. She had taken the self-proclaimed job as his manager, keeping track of any trouble and gossip. Looks like things are going as planned. There's a lot of talk about the mysterious Spider-Man around the city, saving people, stopping robberies, etc. She said as she looked at numerous chat rooms talking about who Spider-Man was, where he came from, and if he was a hero. Naruto said as he focused on his contraption. MJ pulled up a few photos taken from phones displaying the few times Naruto allowed himself to be seen. Though they weren't fully visible, merely taken from a distance, either being photos of his back, his side, or upper body. "We should still keep building up your reputation. And when exactly can I show myself to the public?" Naruto asked as he grabbed a screwdriver. MJ turned to him with a grin. "Well, according to the comics, heroes usually show up with supervillains appear." Turning around in his chair, Naruto lifted up his goggles and gave her a deadpanned look. "MJ, you do know this isn't a comic book, right? My now very dangerous and possibly risky hero life is not for you entertainment." He told her. He was taking a risk here in becoming superhero, saving the world on a regular basis, facing enemies who want nothing more than his destruction, facing the threats of aliens, evil monsters, and the public view. This was a high step from regular teenage life. "I know that. It's so cool. My best friend, a superhero. And I helped make him," she said with a grin. Blinking, Naruto looked at her like she was crazy. "Wada, you make me. What you talking about?" he asked. MJ held up 3 fingers. "First of, I was the one who offered the idea of being a superhero to you. Second, I was the one who made your costume. And thirdly, I'm the one who is helping you find and stop crime around the city. So on those terms, I created Spider-Man," she declared, making him sweat drop at her logic. While it was sorta true, she didn't have to make it sound like she owned him. Shaking his head, he turned back to his work. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Red." Curious on what he was doing, MJ rolled her chair over to him, and looked over his shoulder. She saw that he was working on something that looked like a belt buckle. "What are you doing?" she asked. Glancing at her, Naruto looked at his invention. Before grabbing it, he aimed the front at the wall, and pressed a button. Light shined from the thing, and on the wall was an image of Spider-Man's face. "It's just something I've been working on to pass the time. I call it the spider signal. It works as a flashlight in the dark. Not to mention it'll give me a cool entrance," he said with a grin. Mary Jane looked at him for a sec, before going back to her work on the computer. "That's kinda lame, Whiskers," she said, making Naruto fault. He sent her a betrayed look, before he just went back to work. Grumbling about red-headed best friends not knowing what's cool, making her grin softly. Standing up, Naruto went to another table, this one having chemical beakers and other equipment. This was he was working on creating his web fluid. He picked up one of the small web capsules. Each capsule had enough webbing to last 3 hours. He then grabbed a small gauntlet where he could store the capsules. He created it so that once a capsule was used up, it would automatically switch to another. He had 2 gauntlets, each able to hold 6 capsules, 18 hours of usable web, even if he constantly used them. "Your new costume is almost finished," he heard MJ say. Turning, he raised a brow at her. "New costume? What's wrong with the one you made for me now?" Without looking at him, the Red raised a hand and shook a finger negatively. Grabbing her bag that was under the desk, he opened it and took out a notebook. It was her designer book, holding drafts and sketches of her ideas for her friends' costumes. Facing Naruto, making sure he didn't see and ruin the surprise, she opened the book. "While yes, the current costume is great, if you want to be seen as a real hero, you need something that will show people that you are one." She flipped through the pages until she stopped at the current one, which had the image of the would-be costume, as well as a few details, notes, and list of materials she would need to make it. Naruto tried to take a peek, but she just moved it out of his view, making him pout. Shaking his head, he turned back to the work desk. "Just as long as you don't make it spandex," he said with a grumble. No way in hell he was wearing a skin-tight outfit in public. With his back to her, he didn't see her freeze for a sec. Looking at her book, she smiled nervously and used her pencil to scratch something out. Naruto picked up another of his inventions. It was a small red spider-shaped device, the size of a penny. These were spider tracers, tracking devices that would allow him to find anyone that had one. He made them using the pieces of an old radio. Now he just needed a way to make them stick to things. Suddenly, there was a knock on the basement. Naruto and MJ's eyes widened as they heard the voice of Aunt May, asking if she could enter. Just a second, Aunt May," Naruto called out. The 2 teens moved quickly and hid the Spider-Man costume and spider-theme objects, as well as newspapers. Making sure everything seemed normal, Naruto moved to his desk, and pressed down a large button on the desk. With a beep, the basement door unlocked and opened. Aunt May entered with a tray of cookies and juice. Smiling, she walked down the steps. "You two shouldn't be cooked up in this dark room all day," she told them as she out the tray on an empty desk. Smiling apologetic, Naruto went and grabbed a cookie, planting a kiss on his aunt's cheek. "Sorry about that, Aunt May. We were just doing homework." MJ nodded in agreement as she took a cookie too. Taking a bite, her taste buds exploded at the warm, soft, and chocolatey goodness that was Aunt May's cookies. Lady should get an award for them. Smiling at the two, Aunt May took a seat on a chair. "So you two, how are things? Everything okay?" she asked them. The 2 teens shared a hidden glance. Naruto wanted to keep his aunt completely in the dark about his new activities. If he found out he was about to pursue the life of a superhero, it would wreak her. As one, they shrugged. "Everything's fine. Completely fine," they responded simultaneously. Aunt May smiled gladly. "Good. Oh, before I forget, Naruto, Mrs. Benkins called. Her lawn could use a trimming, and was wondering if you would be kind enough to mow it for her. She said she would pay you well." Naruto shrugged and nodded. He could use the money. He then frowned and looked at his aunt. He was really worried about her. Since his uncle died, he's been taking care of her, waking up early to cook breakfast, and fixing anything broken in the house. He tried to do laundry, but was later banned by his aunt from doing it again when he accidentally put his Spider-Man costume with the whites, turning everything red or pink. When questioned on how he could even do that, his response was, "I was washing the flag." "My flag? Really, Parker? That was your excuse? No one washes the flag." Kneeling in front of May, Naruto gently held her hands. "What about you, Aunt May? You okay?" he asked. May smiled at her nephew, raising a hand and gently cupped his cheek. Yes, she was greatly saddened at the loss of her husband, and she would miss him dearly. But at least she still had her beloved nephew. Yes, sweetheart, I'm okay. Leaning up, she planted a kiss on his forehead. Patting his cheek, she stood up. Well, I suppose I'll leave you two to do your homework then. Waving at them, she went back up. Naruto frowned as he looked after her. He knew his aunt was sad, losing not only her in-laws, his parents, but also her husband. Naruto made a vow, he would always look after and protect his aunt. No matter what. MJ sighed as she grabbed her bag. Well, guess we really should do our homework. Naruto groaned at that. He was just kidding. While he may be smarter than 75% of his school, he was still a teenager and hated doing homework. Meanwhile, at Oscorp, Norman Osborn sat behind his desk in his office, going over the reports of the development of the cross-species project. It would seem that adding the latest development into the formula worked just as well as having the second part of the original formula. He had grown tired of constant failures in the project, and had taken to doing something to ensure there were results. From his top secret and secure vault, laid something he had kept there for many years. With only a small amount of people knowing that it was there. A replica of the government's top secret super soldier serum. While it wasn't as powerful as the one that had been used to create Captain America, its enhancing capabilities have been recorded to work nearly as well in the past. Sure, it was never fully tested on humans, merely small specimens like those spiders and other animals, but risks were necessary to take. So adding the Oscorp super soldier serum into the cross-species formula, it seemed to do the trick, as out of the 5 recent test subjects who had taken the formula, one had survived the procedure was showing remarkable results. He would continue monitoring results before moving to phase 2. Suddenly, he heard a ruckus coming from outside his office. Narrowing his eyes, he stood up, fixed his tie, and approached the door. Osborn. Hearing a familiar, angry shout, Norman narrowed his eyes. Stepping out of his office, his scowl grew on his lips when he saw a bomb old man shouting at one of his men. Where is Osborn? I demand to see him. He shouted at the suit-wearing man. However, the suit was still, merely standing still as he looked at the old man with a blank look. The old man growled in anger, and was about to shout, but stopped when someone spoke. Is there something I may help you with, Mr. Toombs? Norman asked as he approached, his eyes hard and face blank. Seeing the CEO of Oscorp, Toombs glared hatefully at him. He approached him, getting in Norman's face. Norman didn't even blink or move. Osborn, how dare you steal my idea? Toombs howled as he poked Norman hard on the chest, but he didn't get so much as a flinch. Norman blinked dully as he looked at the elder man. I am afraid I do not know what you are talking about. That only made Toombs angrier. You don't kn 4 months ago I presented you my plans for magnetic air transport, but you rejected them. And what I do find out later? That Oscorp announced their tech flight. It was my ideas and you stole it. The guards moved in, but stopped when Norman raised a hand. He stared at the old man and gently pushed away his hand from his chest. Really now, I must say, that is some dangerous thinking, Mr. Toombs. Dangerous and unsupportable. He narrowed his eyes at Toombs, and leaned in closer. Listen well, you old fossil. You have lasted decades and achieved nothing to your name. Not as a young man. And certainly not as an old man. It's time for you to sit in your rocking chair and wither away like you're supposed to, and leave the future to the best generation. You are nothing but a vulture. Looking for meat because you can't get it yourself. Norman muttered to Toombs, making the old man angrier by the second. Scoffing, Norman stood back, and fixed his tie. He snapped his fingers. Boys, please escort Mr. Toombs out of my building. 2 guards stepped forward and began dragging Toombs, as the elder was shouted curses at Norman. Rolling his eyes at his time being wasted, Norman went back to his office. He had work that required his attention. Next day, Midtown High. It was a free period, and Naruto was at the cafeteria. In front of his were a few 2LS and a contraption as he tried to fix his invention. He was known to work on his small machinery at times when in school, so students were used to it, and the teachers and principal allowed it, as long as he didn't blow part of the school up, again. You blow up a classroom by accident one time, and people wouldn't let it go. He was working on a voice changer, so when he changes into his Spider-Man outfit, his voice would be different. The mask didn't muffle his voice enough since it was breathable. Naruto was being cautious. With the technology advancing nowadays, criminals, the smart on S, could identify his voice by recording, and find his location, putting his Aunt May and his friends in danger. So he would have to take any precaution necessary to ensure that didn't happen. In front of him, MJ sat, busy working on her computer as she shopped online for the things she needed to create Naruto's costume. She didn't want to make it out of weak materials. To her, Naruto's safety and protection was top priority. And so, she shopped at the inventory online stores of time manufacturing companies, like Stark Industries and Oscorp. Good thing Stark Industries had some materials he could use for the costume at reasonable prices. Hey, you two. Looking up, the duo saw Harry walking toward them. Hey, Harry, Naruto greeted with a raised hand, fist bumping with the rich boy. MJ nodded at him. Harry smiled at the two as he sat down next to Naruto, though he soon quickly scooted away nervously when he saw that Naruto was working on one of his invention. He chuckled nervously. Naruto, he called, getting a low, from the blonde as he was distracted with his work. That thing's not going to, blow up, is it? He asked, clearly recalling the last time one of the teen's gadgets blew up in his face. His face burned for weeks. Naruto waved him off. Relax, it's not on. I'm just fixing and exchanging some parts, he said as he turned the black collar around. The only device was the small mic and speaker on the side. He looked at the motion detector on the inside of the collar. He would need to install the device inside his mask for easier use. His hand reached out and grabbed the sandwich his aunt made him and tool a bit. Tuna. Harry nodded as he looked at the two. They sure looked busy with what they were doing. He had noticed that they've been busy the whole month, hanging out together more than usual. He wondered if they had finally admitted their feelings and were dating, but shook his head. They didn't act like a couple, so it had to be something else. He didn't say anything though, figuring it wasn't his right to snitch. He looked at the blonde. Hey Naruto, he said, getting the blonde's attention. We still up for our game night after school? Got the new Monster Hunter game? Naruto smirked. Of course. Hope you're ready to lose, rich boy. He challenged, getting Harry to smirk. In your dreams. By the way, have you guys heard? He asked. Naruto blinked in confusion and looked at MJ, who looked up from her computer. The two blinked and looked at Harry. Heard what? MJ asked. Harry looked at them in surprise. You mean you don't know? You guys work in the school's newspaper, for crying out loud, he said. He saw that they still looked confused and sighed, facepalming. I'm talking about the rumors of the new hero that's been seen around the city. Spider-Man, they are calling him. Naruto blinked in realization. He glanced around, and for the first time, he saw that all the students were talking amongst themselves. With his enhanced hearing, he could pick up the words, Spider-Man, hero, questioning who he was, where he came from, and other things. MJ blinking and nodded. Oh yeah, nearly forgot. The whole school's taking about him. She took a quick glance at Naruto with a smirk. Luckily Harry didn't notice as he nodded. Yeah, nobody really knows what he looks like, only that he had been taking down thugs and criminals all month. And that all that was left were the criminals knocked out and tangled in what looked like webbing. There are rumors that he was first seen in a wrestling match. Naruto hummed to appear thoughtful. He couldn't let Harry find out his secret. He wanted to tell him, but it was too risky. It was bad enough Mary Jane knew. He didn't like it. Harry was his best friend. They didn't keep secrets from one another. But he didn't want to put Harry in trouble with his secret identity. What do you think of this, Spider-Man, Harry? He asked, wondering the brunette's opinion. Harry shrugged. Not much to say. Apparently, he's the new guy on the block. But I've heard my dad say that the police are weary of the guy, saying that he was some kind of vigilante. Naruto frowned and shared a glance with MJ. He didn't want to become an enemy to the police, so he will need to figure out a way to earn their trust. I've heard that the Daily Bugle's holding a reward for photos of the Spider-Man, MJ said, making Naruto look at her. She turned her laptop around, showing the two males the Daily Bugle website. As she said, right at the front page, was an ad showing that the Glay would give a reward for anyone who brought them pictures of Spider-Man live. Naruto pursed his lips, wondering if he should do it. He was looking for any way to earn money, not just for his equipment, but most of all for the bills that were coming in. This morning, before he left for school, he had heard his aunt on the phone, speaking with MJ's aunt, Anna Mae Watson, about the bills that were showing up. His uncle had always taken care of them, but with him gone. Naruto frowned as he looked at the ad. With great power comes great responsibility, not just as Spider-Man, but also as Naruto Benjamin Parker. Unknown location. Adrian Toombs gave a shout of anger as he pushed everything off his desk onto the floor. His home office was a mess as he let his anger out on everything around him. That god-forsaken Osborn, he shouted as he grabbed a vase and threw it against the wall, shattering it. How dare he make a mockery of me? I have given everything I had to bring my company up to where it is. That flight tech was my life's work, and he dares steal it from me. Smashing his fists down on his desk, he glared with immense hatred in his eyes. He had given his life to ensure his work would become the best in the world, rivaling Stark Industries in wealth fair, only for some bastard and arrogant fool to take it from him. Osborn, you will pay, he declared, no matter what. Raising himself, he moved to the side of his office. With a grunt, he pushed the bookshelf away, throwing it uncaringly to the floor. Behind the shelf was a large safe, as big and tall as a car. Putting in the code, he opened the safe. Inside was his life's work, his legacy after so many decades. A savage grin spread through his face. Osborn, this, old man, will make you regret messing with me. Back in Middleton High, hours later. Re-nung. With the bell ringing, students in the chemistry class began standing up and leaving the room. It was the last class of the day, and many were EAG. To do their own things or hang out with their friends. Standing up, Naruto stretched with a yawn. Having to sit and listen to the teacher blabber on stuff he already knew was tiring. He grabbed his bag as MJ joined him at his side. Nodding to her, they made their way out. Naruto was meeting Harry for their game night and MJ was tagging along since she had nothing better to do. Naruto, please stay for a sec. The teacher called to him. Turning around, Naruto raised a brow. Exchanging looks and a shrug, Naruto and MJ approached the teacher together. MJ was also curious on what the teacher wanted to talk to her BFF about. Naruto, do you by chance know Curtis Connors? The teacher asked. Naruto blinked in surprise. Yeah, he follow his work. Dr. Connors was one of his science heroes, so he always kept a tab on his work and achievement. Not to mention, considering Connors worked on the cross-species project, he was curious on any other change happening to him since the spider bite. He wanted to meet him personally, but was forced to wait. A masked man appearing in front of the doctor was just calling for trouble. And he didn't know what would happen if he revealed his secret. However, there was another reason he was holding back. The teacher smiled. Well, it just so happens that Dr. Connors is offering internships at his lab at Empire State University, and I have offered my best student. He said, making Naruto's eyes widen. Me, really? He asked excitedly. He was actually going to be able to work with Dr. Connor. The teacher nodded. Yes, it's free entry, so you can meet with him today if you would like. Osborn residence. Really sorry I have to reschedule game night, Harry. Harry waved Naruto off as the two were relaxing on the couch on Harry's large living room. Don't sweat it, Naru. This internship is way more important than hunting monsters, he said. Naruto nodded, glad his best friend wasn't mad at him. He had an hour before his meeting with Dr. Connors. MJ was going with him for support, and, to make sure you don't go all fanboy, were her words. He wanted to ask Harry if he wanted to come, but thought against it. It wouldn't do good to bring a group with him to a meeting, no matter if they were friends. I just hope the position pays. While it would be great to work there, I am in desperate need of money, he muttered, frowning. Harry raised a brow. Let me guess, need more equipment for your lab. Looking to get a motorcycle, he guessed. Naruto sighed and leaned back on the couch. I wish it was that. But it's worse, he said, getting Harry to look at him in confusion. The bills are piling in, he said, making Harry wince. He knew Naruto's uncle was the one who took care of those. For as smart as Naruto was, Oni in accounting wasn't his area of expertise. If I don't figure out some way to earn money fast, Aunt May will be working her legs off more than she was already. Harry frowned. I don't know, Naruto. Internships don't usually pay money. Well, maybe I can convince Drive Connors to offer me a job as an assistant. The blonde suggested, but Harry didn't look convinced. Naruto sighed. Yeah well, I need to give it a shot. I mean look at your place. You live here from having so much money thanks to your dad, and he's a scientist. He hinted. Boys, can I see you for a second? The two teens flinched when they heard Harry's father. Norman, call them. Looking at each other, they stood up and made their way out to the patio, where Norman was sitting on a chair at the outdoor table. He was drinking some tea, which he put down as he looked at them. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Naruto flinched. I hope I didn't offend you, sir. He tried to apologize, but Norman stopped him. Now, Mr. Parker, there is no need to apologize. I never do. Now, what's this about an internship? I was offered one under Dr. Curtis Connors at ESU. Norman smiled in surprise. Connors, a brilliant man he is. You'll learn much under him. I wish you luck in your interview, Naruto. Though I don't think you will need it, son. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. Thank you, Mr. Osborn, he said. Suddenly, his eyes widened when his spider senses went off. What the? Osborn. The three's heads snapped up just in time as something swooped down from the sky and grabbed Norman, carrying him away. Dad, Harry shouted in shock. With his eyes and spider senses, Naruto was able to see what grabbed Norman. It was a bald old man, wearing some kind of black and red metallic suit. With metal wings coming from the arms, like bird wings. He wasn't able to react in time before Norman was taken. Naruto looked at Harry. Harry, call the police. I'll see if I can follow them on out of your motorcycles. He said, needing an excuse. Harry nodded. Okay, keys are in the counter. He said quickly before running inside. When Naruto was sure he was gone, he quickly grabbed his backpack. Taking off his shoes, he put them in his backpack. He jumped on top of the ledge. Shaking off the slight nervousness from being so high up, he jumped off. As he fell, he took off his shirt and pants, showing that he had his costume's shirt and pants. From his bag, he took out his jacket and mask, and put them on, followed by his footwear and web shooters. All done in the span of 5.4 seconds. Shooting a web line, he caught a building and began swinging. As he swung, he dropped his bag on the corner of a roof garden to pick up later. Don't worry, Harry, I'll get your dad back. I promise. Even though he was being carried like a prey over 100 feet up in the air, Norman didn't have any fear showing on his face. Looking up at the person carrying him, he recognized him. Toombs. Adrian Toombs glared down at Norman as he flew. His electromagnetic wing harness suit was working perfectly. The anti-graviton generator on his back allowed him to soar through the air like a bird. No thrusters or flames needed. He was the king of the skies. What do you think of my suit, Osborn? Can your tech flight do this? Toombs asked as he soared higher, flying above the buildings. He shot like a blur, looping and zigzagging. What is the meaning of this, Toombs? Norman demanded. You dared to steal my idea. My legacy. And don't call me Toombs. I am what you called me. I'm the Vulture, the old man declared. You're insane, old man. What is it that you want? Norman asked. What I want is for you to announce to the world that I am the creator of your ingenious flight technology. You will pay me every amount used to create all your flight gear. And you will make a public apology for stealing my technology. Toombs, now dubbed Vulture, announced as he flipped Norman into the air. The man gasped as he fell, but was caught by Toombs. You have gone senile in your age, old man. I never apologize, and you can forget about your demands. Norman declared, making Vulture grit his teeth, his anger rising to the limit. I may be an old man, but I'm not a patient one. He yelled in fury, and released Norman from his talon-like feet. Ah! Norman yelled as he fell to his death. He watched as the ground came at him fast, and felt dread in his chest. Luckily, his drop was stopped, as he was caught. Opening his eyes, Norman looked at who rescued him. and saw a man in a red and black outfit. Strange. I didn't know it was raining businessmen. Spider-Man joked, his voice slightly distorted thanks to his voice modifier. Holding Norman, they swung through the tops, while Vulture looked on in shock. What is the meaning of this? He demanded and chased after his prey. These skies belong to me. Wow, talk about arrogant. By the way, did I interrupt a feud? Well, that's embarrassing. I mostly like to stay away from them. You know, be the third wheel. Spidey said nonchalant as he continued swinging away from the crazed bird man. What are you babbling about? Put me done, Norman demanded. Dude, calm down. Enjoy the sights. Not many can take in the view of New York from this high up, you know. But the way, travel isn't free. But if you want to pay in kindness, lay off the snacks. 'Cause you are one heavy guy. Spidey taunted. Who are you? Norman and Vulture demanded simultaneously. What? Don't you folks ready the paper? Watch the news. Then again, I am new at this. As for who I am, I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Spidey introduced himself. Spider-Man, I thought you were just a myth. A news prank. Vulture denied. Spidey scoffed. As he used a building side as a platform and bounced off, shaking Vulture a bit in his path. I definitely need an advertising agent if I want to make it in the hero business. He muttered. But enough about me. Mind telling me what you two are doing playing this high? You know, someone could get hurt. He teased. Arg. Vulture screamed. Enough of this. Give me back Osborn. He must pay. He shouted and increased his speed. His razor-sharp wings sliced the web line, making Spidey and Norman fall. Oh crap. Spidey cursed. Thinking quickly, he shot a line at Norman, pulling him close as he shot another at a building. Swinging off just before they impacted the ground. Nearby at the police station, two cops, a man and a woman, walked out. They were talking about the rumored Spider-Man, discussing on what they thought of him. The woman argued on him being a vigilante, and not following the law. Her partner thought otherwise. Heads up. Looking up, the two gasped when they saw the said spider, and Norman swinging their way. Swinging low to the ground, Spidey dropped Norman, literally, on them, sending him crashing onto the woman. Getting up, she was about to say something, but Norman pushed her down. Just as Vulture swooped very close over them. What's going on? She questioned. Explanations inside. Norman stressed, and the cops nodding, he was moved inside the station. Voo. Lture growled in anger at having his prey out of his range. He switched his target to Spider-Man and shot at him. You will pay, vermin. Now, I would calm down if I were you, old man. Wouldn't want to have a heart attack. Spidey mocked, getting an angry shout. On that note, should you even be flying in your age? He asked as he flipped over a Vulture as he shot to cut him with his wings. Can an old man do this? Vulture shouted as he turned around and shot again. Spidey leapt at a close building and pushed off, dodging the bird-themed man. The two continued their chasing, this time. Vulture in the front as Spider-Man chased him. Look, Beaky, I get the whole, dressing up as your favorite animal thing. Even better, you can fly. But still, what's up with the whole picking people up from the ground and dropping them from the sky thing? You watch too many horror movies. The web swinger asked as he got in front of Vulture, web swinging backwards as he faced the old man. Vulture gritted his teeth in anger, growing very annoyed with this pest. Spidey moved out of the way as Vulture shot past him. He clung to the side of a building as he watched Vulture vanish into the sky. Beaky, don't go. We can make this work. I'll feed you bird seed. As the old man vanished, Spidey could hear one last shout. The name's Vulture. Later. Outside ESU. Okay Harry. Glad everything's okay and that your dad's fine. Okay. I'll stop by tomorrow. See ya. Naruto said as he spoke through the phone. After Vulture vanished, he checked up on Norman from a distance, making sure he got home safe and sound. After grabbing his stuff from the top of a building, he met up with Mary Jane and told her what happened as they made their way to the interview. Wait, a Vulture man? MJ asked confused, trying to wrap her head around what she was hearing. Well, not a vulture animal mutant. It was just a man in some kind of suit that looked like a bird design. Interesting enough, I didn't see any thrusters or repulsion equipment. It was like an anti-gravity device. He flew so easily without any trouble with wind pressure or anything. Naruto explained, very impressed at the design of the old man's equipment. So, madman, crazy scientist, angry janitor, MJ guessed. Naruto shrugged as they climbed the steps and stopped at the door. Don't know, never seen him before, though he did seem to hold a grudge against Norman Osborn. Might have to keep an eye on him in case Beaky makes a reappearance. He said, with MJ nodding. Anyway, you ready for this, brain boy? She teased, making him roll his eyes. I'm always ready, Red. He told her, and finally entered the building, MJ right behind him. Once inside, Naruto whistled at the size and space of the interior, as well as the equipment. ESU was one of the best colleges in New York. Their equipment were advanced, donated by Tony Stark himself. Wow, MJ muttered, equally impressed as Naruto as they looked around. Their arrival caught the attention of someone. Looking up from checking some things, was a woman with auburn hair and green eyes, wearing a lab coat. Spectacular Spider-Man, seeing the two teens, she made her way to them. Can I help you? Looking at her, Naruto nodded. Yes, please, I'm here for the internship. The woman nodded. Ah yes, you must be the appointment. Greetings, I'm Martha Connors. I'm my husband's, Kurt, assistant. I'll go get him, she told them and went to a room in the back. As she did that, Naruto looked around. The equipment here was more than the stuff he had in his lab. The Oni needed to get these stuff would have to be at the hundreds, or just no top people. So, I hear you will to apply for the internship. Looking forward, Naruto saw a man he recognized from an old photo of his dad's, Curtis Connors. He was a handsome man with a chiseled jaw, and dark brown hair. Ultimate Spider-Man, he had blue eyes, and wore a white coat like his wife. What caught his attention though, was that his right arm was robotic. He nodded to the statement and raised his left hand. Smiling, Kurt shook his hand. He couldn't tell how many times people went to shake his right hand, only to make things awkward. Yes sir, Naruto said, glad to meet someone who worked a lot with his parents years ago. His dad's notes and journals talked about his encounters and work with the man. However, the last entry spoke of a fight between the two, just before his parents died. You look familiar, young man. Have we met? Kurt asked. He felt like he saw the young blonde before, but couldn't put his finger on it. Name's Naruto, sir. Naruto Parker. Naruto introduced himself. Kurt and Martha gasped softly at the last name. I'm Richard and Mary Parker's son. Yes, Kurt muttered. It was all coming back to him now. Yes, we've seen you before. Mary brought you to us before to see you. You were so young back then. Around 3 years old. I'm not sure if you remember. Naruto shook his head with a sad smile. Sorry, I don't. I only know you from my dad's journals, and your discoveries. Martha smiled sadly at the teen and shook his hand. Well, it's very great to see you again, Naruto. She said. She remembered when her good friend Mary brought her son to work one day, and introduced him. He was so adorable back then. She and Kurt, they had feared that he had been killed with his parents as well. It was great to know that he was alive and well, but she couldn't imagine the loss he must have felt on that day. Shaking her head to rid such negative thoughts, she looked at the young redhead next to the Parker. And who's this? Oh, Naruto said in recognition and gestured to his best friend. This is Mary Jane Watson, a good friend of mine. She came with him as encouragement. I hope it's all right. Kurt chuckled and waved him off. It's quite all right, but anywho, shall we continue with the interview? He asked. Naruto nodded. I never had an internship interview, so I don't know how they work. The interview was very simple. Kurt just asked him about his desire for science, his basic areas of expertise, and the times he was available. He was also given a tour of the place, being told about the equipment and what it does. As they did that, MJ and Martha talked with each other on the side, at times giggling. Well, everything's in order. It's getting pretty late, so you can start tomorrow after school. Kurt told him. Naruto nodded. Great. Quick question. Kurt nodded. Well, wondering about the issue of money. Kurt frowned sadly and shook his head. I'm afraid the internship does not pay. He said, making Naruto sigh. I've heard about your uncle's death. I'm sorry by the way. Money problems? He asked. His family was friends with the Parkers for a long time, so he wanted to help his old friend's son. Bills. Kurt nodded. He rubbed the back of his head. Well, I'll see if I can issue in a lab assistant position alongside the internship. Though be warned that it doesn't pay much, he said. Naruto nodded, happy that he at least found something. So, you and Naruto? Martha stressed, unable to help herself. Her internal mother instincts were kicking in, and she just had to tease the two teens. Her son, Billy, was still too young to notice girls, and Mary Parker was her best friend, so she will mostly filling in the role of being the teasing mother to the young blonde, if only temporary. Mary Jane blinked in confusion, not getting where Martha was going. After a few seconds, she caught on, and blushed faintly. What? Me and Naruto? And no, we're just friends, she muttered in embarrassment, making Martha chuckle. She put a hand on Mary Jane's shoulder. Now, take it from my experience, as well as Naruto's mother. Going out with a smart scientist isn't as bad as it seems. It's actually quite interesting. Sure, the men like to blabber on and on about science a few too many times. MJ nodded in agreement. Ven had her own experience at dealing when Naruto goes into his geek mode, but take it from me, it just makes them cuter. MJ blushed at that, neither denying nor agreeing. She just turned her head and looked at the caged reptiles on the side of the lab. Martha just chuckled at the girl, recognizing the crush she no doubt had for the young Parker. It reminded her of how Mary was with Richard when they were in college. She smiled in nostalgia as she looked at the young blonde as he talked to her husband. She saw the glint in his eyes, the same glint she would often see in Richard and Mary's eyes. He was definitely their son. A Parker through and through. Soon, Kurt and Naruto approached them. All right, everything's worked out. He'll start tomorrow after school, Kurt said as he put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. He looked at Mary Jane. What about you, Miss Watson? We could use any hands here, he said, making a joke at himself. He had long since gotten used to his loss, and no longer felt regret. MJ shook her head with a small smile. Thanks for the offer, but science isn't really my thing. I leave that to Naruto, she said as she moved to Naruto's side. Kurt nodded in understanding, and waved the two off. Martha joined him on his side as they watched the two teens talk as they left the lab. It's good to see that Naruto's okay, Martha muttered. Kurt nodded in agreement. When they had heard about Richard and Mary's plane crash, killing them along with the Brocks, it saddened them. They were relieved that their son was alive and well. Kurt looked at his wife. You go on and get Billy. I'll lock up after I shut everything off and meet you at home. Martha nodded and kissed her husband on the cheek. She went to grab her things and hang up her coat, before leaving. Alone in the lab, Kurt turned and went to his office in the room in the back. Entering, the office was dark, the blinds pulled on, with the only light being from the lamp on his desk. He sat down on his chair with a sigh. With his only arm, he reached over and took off the robotic arm, unconsciously massaging the stub of what remained of his arm. He looked down at the folder that laid on his desk. It was opened, displaying its contents. It held all of his and Richard's notes concerning the cross-species project. Or at least, his part of the notes. Richard held the other part. For years, Kurt looked for a way to enable cellular regeneration, in order to not only bring back his lost arm, but also so heal the world from body injury and pain. He worked on cross-engineering animal DNA, while Richard worked on his own project, the suit. He still didn't know what it was, as Richard was very secretive about it. Richard had helped him with the cross-species project, using lizard DNA. Lizards were able to regrow lost limbs like tails or hands. If he could just find out how to transfer that ability to him. He sighed as he rested his face in his hand. No, with the loss of Richard, came the loss of the final product he needed to complete the project. No matter how many times Kurt injected the recalculated lizard DNA into his body, it didn't do anything. His body rejected the serum, and evaporated it in an instant. If Norman Osborn couldn't finish the project, even with his team of top scientists, what hope did he have? He wondered, could Naruto know or at least have any evidence or clue of Richard's formula? He quickly shook his head. Richard was paranoid when it came to keeping his secret. There was no way he'd leave something so important and dangerous with his only son, especially when so many powerful and dangerous people wanted it. Pulling out the drawer, he took out a syringe, as well as a vial containing a green liquid. Putting the vial in the syringe, he injected into his stub with a grunt. Taking a deep breath, he released it and put his robotic arm back on. Standing up, he turned off the light, and left the office. It was dawn and the sun was getting ready to set. A flash of light went off as Naruto in his Spider-Man costume swung by the tall buildings. Doing a few flips and turns, several flashes went off. He did a large wide jump, his body in arc as he caught a flash. A few more tricks. He stopped and picked up his camera that was webbed to the ledge of a building top. He checked the photos, deeming which ones were good to give to the Bugle for the price money. These look good. But what I really need is pictures of Spidey in action. Naruto muttered, his mask pulled up over his face. He looked at the sun, judging the time remaining before he had to head home before Aunt May got worried. His curfew was 10 o'clock. He had 3 hours left. A beep sounded through his earpiece. Pressing his fingers on it, he turned it on as he connected to the police radio. He listened as a call was made, reporting a break-in at a store. Smirking, he put his camera in his backpack and put his mask down. Shooting a web line, he swung to the location. The thugs were very easy to handle. No matter the numbers, he was faster, stronger, and more agile. He handled them in a minute flat. Not to mention he was able to finally use his spider signal for his entrance, and got some good pics. Or at least he would have if the flash didn't reflect off the store's window. Grumbling under his breath at not having good pictures of him in action, he made it home with 2 minutes left till 10. Entering, he smiled when he saw his aunt sitting on the couch, watching television. "Hey Aunt May, I'm home. I'm not late, am I?" he asked as he went to the kitchen. May smiled at her nephew. "No, dear, right on time. There's some apple pie in the fridge if you're hungry," she called out, getting a "thanks" from the kitchen. "Anything eventful today?" she asked as Naruto walked out with a plate with a piece of pie. "You have no idea," as he recalled his meeting with the Vulture. He sat down next to May and shrugged. "Well, I had an interview with Kurt Connors as his intern," he told her. May blinked in surprise, hearing the familiar name. Connors. That's right, she thought, remembering him as Richard and Mary's friend from the lab. "Really? How did it go?" Naruto smiled at her. "I've got it. I start tomorrow after school. Not sure how long it would take, so there's a chance I might be late past curfew," he said, apologizing. May waved him off with a proud smile. "It's quite all right. I'm so proud of you, Naruto," she said and hugged him. Naruto smiled as he balanced the plate on his hand and hugged her back with one arm. Pulling back, May fixed his messed up hair. Though it was no use. "Well, just be sure to call me if you are going to be late. You know I worry when you have to travel those dark streets," she told him, her tone holding a bit of nervousness in it. Naruto smiled at her. "Don't worry, Aunt May. I'll be careful, I promise." Soon May went to bed as Naruto sat in the small desk in his room. After making sure his aunt was truly asleep, he put on his costume. He was checking his web shooters, making sure his capsules were full. He was going to check up on Norman and Harry. After that run-in with Vulture, he wanted to make Sue. The old man didn't make another surprise visit. Ready, he left through the window. Later that night, Spider-Man was perched on the roof of the Osborn building. He was keeping lookout for any sign of the Vulture. Harry was safely sleeping in his room, and Norman was on his way home by limo with guards. He had planted one of his finished spider tracers on the limo. He looked down at the tracker on his hand. Locked on the tracer on the limo. He had used 3 tracers so far, not including the one on the limo. One for MJ's charm bracelet on her cell phone, another on the back of Aunt May's jacket, which she used all the time. And the last one Harry's backpack. This way, he could be noticed if anything happened to his precious people. He already lost so many of his precious people, he didn't want to lose more. Hearing a noise, he looked down over the edge, and saw the limo pull up. The guards stepped out first to make sure the coast was clear, before they allowed Norman out. So far so good, Spidey said. Unfortunately, he spooked too soon, as suddenly, his spider sense went off. Osborn, Vulture shouted as he swooped down. The guards quickly pushed Norman back in the car and ordered the driver to go as they fired at the Vulture. However, Vulture easily dodged the bullets and chased after the car. Spidey quickly chased after. "You will not get away from me this time." "My thoughts exactly," Spider-Man thought. He followed as the guard inside the limo stood up from the sunroof and fired at Vulture. Vulture just charged at him, and picked him up with his talons, before throwing him away. Moving quickly, Spidey caught the man with a bed of web before he hit the ground. Vulture landed on top of the vehicle, glaring at Norman as the man backed into his seat. "You will pay, Osborn," he declared as he raised his right razor-sharp wing. However, he didn't get the chance as a line of web stuck to his back and pulled him back. "Hold it right there, Beaky," Spider-Man said as he appeared. "You," Vulture growled as he glared at the fool who dared stop him the first time. "I could have sworn I gave out my name last time," Spidey muttered as he cupped his chin in thought. "Maybe your memory's not so good at your age." Quote, "You will not stop me this time, insect," Vulture shouted as he ripped off the web line and flew at him. Spider-Man jumped out of the way. He stuck to the side of a building, watching as Vulture floated in the air. "Okay, first off, spiders are arachnids, not insects. And second, isn't there a curfew for old people?" Spider-Man asked, getting an angry roar from the bird-themed villain. With a swipe of his wing, several feathers shot out like daggers at the spider hero. "Whoa," gasping, he jumped out of the way. "That's surprising," he commented. Before he was hit from the side by a body tackle from Vulture. Recovering, Spidey caught himself with a web line. "Okay, someone's not getting their pudding tomorrow." He moved out of the way of feathered GGERS as they tried to pierce him through. With Spider-Man distracted for the moment, Vulture took the chance to chase Osborn. Making it to the limo, he landed on the roof. Glaring at Norman, he aimed his wing at him, his hand on the trigger to launch the hidden blades. However, before he could launch it, Spidey stopped him by grabbing the wing with a web line and pulling it backwards, the launch. blades firing into the road and bouncing harmlessly. Vulture growled as Spidey appeared in the limo through the torn-out side door, ripped off by Toon's earlier one, sat down comfortably on the leather chair. "Whistle damn, nice ride. And is that an ice cream maker?" he joked. Growing angrier, Vulture was about to shout something, but was stopped when a web line caught him on the face and pulled forward. Before he was kicked hard in the face, sending him flying. Jumping out from the car, Spidey landed on the road in front of Vulture. Ripping the webbing off his face with a growl, Vulture shot at Spider-Man. With his agility and reflexes, Spider-Man dodged, flipped, and rolled the wing slashes. Bending backwards from a slash that flew over his head, he got up and launched an uppercut at Vulture's chin, sending him into the air. Shaking his head, the old man stopped in midair. He glared at the damn arachnid who dared stop him from exacting his revenge. Moving his wings, he NCHED a flurry of black feather blades at the hero. Spidey saw a manhole near him, and shooting a web line, pulled it toward him. Grabbing it, he used it as a shield from the blades. After a few seconds, the shower stopped. Taking the chance, he hurled the manhole at Vulture. Eyes widening, he jumped out of the way. Smirking at the sewer covering missing him, he looked back forward, only to meet a fist to the face. Shaking his head, a vein pulsed on his head. "Enough of this," he roared and flew off, after his original target. Spider-Man followed him. He caught up to the limo, and smirked savagely and moved in closer. However, before he knew it, the limo made a hard left, and entered a garage building. "No," he roared at losing his target. Face going practically red, he shot a heavy glare at Spider-Man. "This is all your fault," he roared and dived at him. Spidey jumped out the way, and web-zipped to another building. He swung away fast with Vulture on his tail. "Okay Parker, think. How do you stop a crazed old man who can fly in some kind of anti-gravity suit?" If I can break into the interior of the pack, I can shut off the power." He began running on the building side as Vulture shot daggers at him. Where the hell is he keeping all of these daggers? He thought as he dodged a talon grab and moved away. Just then, a news helicopter appeared in his path. Eyes widening, he dropped down and swooped under it before continuing swinging. Unfortunately, Vulture was not as kind, and cut off the tail of the helicopter with his razor-sharp wings. Alarms rang out from inside the vehicle as it span out of control. Hearing this, Spidey looked back, and his eyes widened. No, he shouted and turned around. Vulture stood between Spider-Man and the out-of-control copter, as he shot at the hero. However, Spidey didn't have time to mess around, and jumped over Vulture, slamming a heel on the top of his head. With him dazed and distracted, Spidey moved to the copter. He leapt at it, and clung to the side. Grabbing the side door, he tore it off with his immense strength. Inside were 3 people, the pilot, the reporter, and the cameraman. They were screaming in panic at the situation. "Quick, grab onto me," he shouted at them. Having no time to question him, they moved and grabbed into Spidey. Jumping off, they dived down to the ground, the passengers screaming, making him cringe a bit. Raising a hand, he shot a bullet of webbing at the copter, before turning around and shooting another bullet down below. The 3 screamed in fright, thinking they were about to die. Only to blink when they stopped falling. Opening their eyes, they saw that they were caught in a large and strong web. Up above, the out-of-control helicopter was stuck in a massive web between 2 buildings. Blinking, the 3 were put down on the ground by Spider-Man. The female reporter looked at Spider-Man as the cameraman filmed him. Thank you. You save us." "Who are you?" she asked. Spider-Man looked at him. "I'm just your friendly Nawo." He was cut off as Vulture swooped in and grabbed him by his talons. The 3 blinked as Spider-Man was carried away. The only thing left behind was a card that floated harmlessly to the ground. The reporter picked it up. "Courtesy of your friendly neighborhood, Spider-Man." "Dude, I was busy," Spider-Man complained as he was being carried by the Vulture. "You had ruined my chance to make Osborn pay. Now you will take his place," Vulture stated. They flew higher in the air. Spidey scoffed. "Yeah, I don't think so." Swinging his legs back, he got out Vulture's grip, though it teared at the shoulders. Grabbing the man's legs, he flipped over to the man's back. He looked at his shoulders, and saw that the suit was torn there, and he had scratches on his shoulder blades. "Damn, MJ's gonna have my head for this," he thought as his cuts healed rapidly. Shaking his head, he looked at the pack. "Hey, get off me," Vulture demanded and tried to shake Spidey off, even turning upside down. But Spidey stayed. "Whoa," Spider-Man groaned as Vulture kept spinning. "Hey, stop that, I'm gonna hurl, and it'll be on you," he protested, but the old man didn't listen. Growling in annoyance, Spidey raised a hand and swiped down on the right wing. Unknown to him, his fingernails grew longer into claws, and teared right through the metal wing like a knife through bread. Naruto blinked in surprise at what he had just done, and looked at his clawed hand. "What the?" Vulture gasped. He lost control of his flight. "You fool, without my wing, I cannot steer." Looking at the other wing, Spidey had an idea, and once more, clawed the wing right off. With nothing to control his flight patterns, Vulture slowed down before stopping, merely hovering in the air. "No, now I can't fly, and yet you're still hovering," Spidey noted, quite amazed at that. It would seem that this suit worked with 2 functions. The generator to deploy the anti-gravity field, and the wings to steer and change the direction of the flight. Without one, the other cannot work. Putting it off for later thought, he looked at the pack. "Now let's see. There should be a way to open this," he muttered and put his hands on the back, to feel any switch or hatch. If not, he could just punch through. He was about to do exactly that, only to blink in shock when something happened. His hands were suddenly coated in some kind of red electricity. It wasn't painful, so it couldn't be from the pack. "Then what is this?" he mentally questioned. Suddenly, the humming from the pack stopped. The 2 screamed as they suddenly dropped down. Spidey quickly shot a web line to catch them. Holding on to Tooms, he navigated them. They soon reached a low building, and dropped down on the roof. Tooms dropped with a grunt, as Spidey landed easily. Getting up, Tooms glared at Spider-Man. "You ruined everything," he shouted and charged at him. Spidey easily dodged the punches before flipping over the man, pushing off from his shoulders. However, the second his hand came in contact with his shoulder, Toomes screamed in pain as red electricity coursed through his body. Spidey wah, tched in surprise and fascination as Toomes screamed for a minute. Soon he stopped, and crashed into the ground. Spidey approached him cautiously, hearing the old man grunt and groan. I can't move. What have you done to me? I can't move, Toomes demanded as he struggled to move any part of his body. Spidey didn't hear him, as he was too busy looked at the red electricity running through his hands and fingers before they vanished. Just what the hell was that? Later on, he watched from a roof edge as the police took Toomes to jail, charged with the attempted murder of Norman Osborn. With that taken care of, he swung his way home. Entering through the window to his room, he sluggishly approached his bed. He tiredly took off his costume, nearly throwing the articles into his closet, leaving him in his boxers. He crashed down on his bed, the events of the day tiring him out. He didn't last a second before he fell asleep. He would take in as much rest as he could. Today was the first official day as Spider-Man, with many more adventurous and dangerous days, weeks, even years to come for the young hero. But one thing was for sure. Coming tomorrow, the whole city would come to know the existence of Spider-Man. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.